Yeah, I've raced against all them people. They're all very good competitors. Only they've chose to go and race in different places than I have. I just like to think I'm around ASA to help to keep the level of competition up. Mike Eddy has changed a lot as a racer. Mike Eddy used to think he had to go drive as hard as he could and lead every lap, but now Mike Eddy knows that he only has to lead the last lap.
AC-Delco Challenge Series on Prime, America's premier short-track racing series, visits Jennerstown, Pennsylvania, in the western part of the Keystone State, traditional site of the season-ending championship race of the AC-Delco Challenge Series. In fact, the last time we were here was at the end of the 1994 season when Butch Miller won his third ASA championship. Under clearing but darkening skies, the worst of the weather has passed us here. It's a little cool, but conditions should be perfect for racing, and we hope that you enjoy it. Hello again, everybody. I'm Brian Drever, along with my friend, former race car driver Rob Albright. We expect a terrific race here. There has been a lot going on throughout the afternoon and evening, but so far in the 1995 season, every conversation about the AC-Delco Challenge Series has started and ended with Mike Eddy.
Yeah, if you're a Mike Eddy fan, you're in racing heaven. If you're not, it's been a snooze for you. Mike is 3 for 3, 3 starts, 3 victories. He's led over half the laps of competition, but it really began back in February in Florida. He was 6 for 6. Can anybody stop this freight train?
Well, that's a question that a lot of people are asking, and when the question is asked, the answer often comes up, well, what about Glenn Allen Jr.? And except for a little bit of bad luck, well, Glenn and things in this situation in the point series might have been a lot different.
He's the young man that most point to is most likely to succeed Mike Eddy as the next ASA champion, and you're right. Had he not cut a tire while chasing Mike down running second at Toledo, he could have won there. He led a number of laps at Raceway Park a couple of weeks ago. Had older tires and came up just a few feet short, runner-up to Mike in that one. So he's the guy to watch tonight.
Well, this afternoon, we were watching a lot of activity, not the least of which was this big melee in the last chance race. Eddie Sharp got a little bit loose. Brett Bell and the rest came around, and it took out a whole bunch of race cars.
Tom Jones was airborne. That number 51 is the Brandon Sperling machine. And Mike Miller, who is second in points, Brian, very heavy damage. And just as we are speaking right now, that car is completing tech. There's Tom Jones. Now, he has actually relinquished the front body parts that weren't damaged in this altercation. He's given them to Mike Miller.
And he has climbed in a different race car, that normally driven by Randy Larson. The Tony's Pizza entry now has the familiar number 0 of Tom Jones on the side, while Mike Miller's car, as we mentioned, is going to be carrying the front end of Tom Jones' car and will look a little strange indeed. Well, we expect a great race that'll be starting here in just a few minutes. But before we do get that race started, we're going to go to the third member of our broadcast team, Ralph Shaheen.
There it is, the black GM Goodwrench service-backed Pontiac of Mike Eddy. And once again, it will start from the front row. It's the second race in a row that Mike Eddy starts from the front row. But today, he will start on the outside front row. On the pole is the Bluebird and Bob Seneker behind the wheel. Bob, we have a cool, misty night here tonight. In fact, your windshield is pretty fogged up. How difficult is it going to be for you tonight as a driver?
Well, when the wind gets blowing here, after we get a few laps in, it'll clear all the windows off. And the track's just going to be probably a little slippery for a while because it's so cold, but it'll warm up tires up quickly, and we'll be off to a good race.
Gentlemen, take a look at this front windshield. Now, they've been spending a lot of time trying to clean it off. It is very foggy, very misty. You can see how difficult it is to see my hand through the inside. That's what Bob Seneker and the rest of the drivers are going to have to deal with in the early laps here tonight at Jennerstown.
36 cars on the starting grid for the race, and here are the point standings to which we referred earlier.
And with 3 victories, Mike Eddy with a significant lead over Mike Miller. Gary St. Amant, who said from the outset of this season that his quest was not necessarily for race wins, but for a title. He's definitely in the chase. Glenn Allen, despite the problems at Toledo, he's 4th. And Scott Hansen has been quiet but consistent, presently 5th in this Hooter Super Cup point standings.
The second half of the top 10 on points, led by former rookie contender Brian Reffner, who had an excellent qualifying run run here to go along with his pole-sitting position from 1994.
Steve Holtzhausen mysteriously absent tonight. Brad Loney kind of lurking in the wings, waiting for his chance at a victory. Bob Seneker up and down year thus far, but with a pole tonight, he's looking for his first victory of 1995. And young Joe Knott, the youngest driver in the series at just 22.
We're going to go once again now down to Ralph Shaheen, who is on the starting grid. He will get this thing going.
Well, you know, gentlemen, I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome the good folks at Hooters to the AC-Delco Challenge Series. This is Jerry Glover, the president of Hooters Racing. You're going to get us started tonight. How about it?
I'm ready. If they're ready, I'm ready. Gentlemen, start your engines.
The final car has been rolled onto the grid, that of Mike Miller. He'll start 31st tonight. The engines are fired, and we are too. We'll see you in a moment. The AC-Delco Challenge Series on Prime is brought to you in part by Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it's wins, it works. By your GM Goodwrench service dealer, we want your business. By Goodyear, #1 in racing, #1 in tires. And by Winnebago, raise your expectations of what a motorhome should be. Jennerstown and the sun setting over the hills of western Pennsylvania is the site of today's race, the fourth stop on the 1995 AC-Delco Challenge Series. America's premier short track racing comes to your living room. And there are the drivers as they circle the track, getting ready to get this race underway. Let's take a look at the starting grid for this Jennerstown 250.
On the pole, Bob Seneker earning a career 45th pole position and his first of 1995, and Mike Eddy just a few thousandths short of his 28th pole.
On the second row, rookie Jay Summers has shown himself to be very fast this season in his Ford Quaker State Ford, alongside veteran Kent Stauffer and the Papa Joe's Kinetic Flex Dillon Ford. A good qualifying effort for the 98 car.
Brad Loney has finally shaken that label of being a good racer and a marginal qualifier. He's been strong this year in time trials in his Flex Steel Winnebago H&W Chevrolet. And young Joe Knott, he is really coming on strong. He's appropriated Glenn Allen's 1994 crew chief and the man who turned the wrenches in the past for champion Johnny Benson, Chris Bradley. It's made a big difference for young Joe.
Another guy loving life is Tony Raines out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He's in the seat of the Baker Enterprises Cleanburn Chevrolet. He's qualified 7th alongside Brian Reffner, Rookie of the Year contender last year out of Wisconsin Rapids in the Ford of Greensburg Structural Thunderbird.
And in row number 5 on the inside, a young fella way too good to have had such bad luck and not yet have a top 5 finish. Tony Roper in the Child's Tire Snyder Equipment Chevrolet. And Gary St. Amant gunning for that title this year in his Winsport City Ford Thunderbird.
And the man that we spoke of at the top of the show, expected to challenge not only for the season, but perhaps here tonight. Glenn Allen Jr.'s qualifying effort came up a little bit short of what he might expected. And Jeff Neal in the 75 car carrying a Good Luck Rock, kissed by his young daughter, that brought him good luck the last time he was out.
And Glenn Allen really in row 6 because he had no practice time, a blown engine. They had it installed just in time to qualify. Row 7, Kenny Irwin Jr., the open wheel competitor, and veteran Scott Hansen.
Smokestad in the Super America car number 32, and Carl James make up row number 8 in the starting grid.
In the 9th row, Pat Bordeaux, the leading rookie qualifier tonight, and veteran Harold Fair.
Dave Sensiva, Rookie of the Year in 1994, and a very popular fellow with the local fans here in 31 car Rick Miller.
Row number 11, Todd Forbes, a former pole sitter at Jennerstown, and Jim Seeger, who is making his ASA debut. Looks a little like Jimmy Spencer, doesn't he?
And next up, Ray Skillman in the DuPont Kendall Imperial Van Oldsmobile. And alongside him there, Bill Baird in the 26 car, a very leading candidate for most improved driver in the AC-Delco Challenge Series.
Row 13, Bobby Archer and Rick Beebe, a pair of rookies expected to do very well in 1995.
Glenn Galt and John O'Neill, couple of new names, new faces here. And row 14.
In the 15th row, Steve Shive, yet another rookie, and the racing lady, Cindy Peterson. Great to see her make a show. She's a talented racer, and I think she'll do well as the evening progresses.
Mike Miller back there on the 16th row alongside Dr. Yale Conley, both of them involved in that mishap in the last chance race, vowing never to get in another last chance race again.
Row number 17, Dennis Lampman and Tom Jones driving the car normally chauffeured by Randy Larson. He stepped behind the wheel of car number 02. It becomes number 0 for tonight's Jennerstown 250.
And on the 18th row, Eddie Sharp and who said himself, if fingers need to be pointed about the accident, let point them at me. Got a little bit loose and said they just didn't give me enough time to get it straightened out. Everybody went around. You saw Brett Bell do the same.
Let me tell you about qualifying this afternoon. The top 20 drivers separated by just 17 one-thousandths, not hundredths, 17 one-thousandths of a second. And then first through 30th, I think it was only about 3/10 of a second. So incredibly close. Here's some of the drivers that did not make the show tonight. The racing school principal, David Anspaugh, Brad Funk, Randy Ruhlman, Brandon Sperling. And boy, did this young guy have some tough luck. He crashed the car in practice, tore the left front corner up, and had the same problem befall him in this last chance qualifying race just a little bit earlier tonight.
Cars still circling the track behind the front row, of course, of Bob Seneker and Mike Eddy, two veteran drivers on the front. 250 laps and 36 cars starting the race. There you see the spread of what manufacturers are present and accounted for, and a new track record by pole sitter Bob Seneker here for the Jennerstown 250.
Just a touch under 100 miles an hour. The track is just a tad over half a mile, relatively flat, 0.522, 52/100ths of a mile. 70-foot wide straightaways, plenty of racing room. The banking is slight in the turns and as well in the straightaways. I think with the rain that we've had, Brian, we may see single groove racing early, generating into a two-groove racetrack as the evening progresses.
And there's a look at the number 18 car, the Atlanta Communications Pontiac with the Fel-Pro Pontiac front end on it. Mike Miller behind the wheel. Absolutely no idea how that car is going to handle. The crew spent up until the very last moment getting it back and ready to go. Crew chief Carl Hyland and his guys doing a great job just to get that car on the racetrack. Ralph Shaheen standing by with a further update on the situation for Mike Miller.
Well, take a look at the pit road down here, Brian. You can see it's very slick, very wet. These pit boxes are going to be trouble for the drivers when they come in on their first pit stops because it will be slippery down here. Also, Pat Bordeaux had a problem getting his car started. The wire to the battery came off. They got that fixed. He got the car started. He's in the race now, and they tell me they super glued that battery cable on there. It's not coming off.
Getting ready to go green here at Jennerstown for the Jennerstown 250. Flagman Roger Slack standing by to wave them on. Bob Seneker in the Bluebird number 84 sits on the pole. Mike Eddy, the 3-for-3 driver here this season and the 7-time champion on the outside, and we're racing. The second turn, Mike Eddy already moving around the number 84 and looking to set sail for win number 4, perhaps, Rob Albright.
And I'm surprised that he's taken the quick early lead. We saw a preliminary race tonight, a local late model program, saw the outside group not especially strong. Mike Eddy is absolutely determined in 1995 that there will be no more close point championships. He's lost the title the last 2 years. As Yale Conley is off the pace, he's dropping onto pit road already at the conclusion of lap number 1 as the field very tightly bunched through turn number 4 with a great race for position between Brad Loney and Joe Knott.
Yale Conley, the racing surgeon, just disappearing down there on pit road. He too was involved in that mishap last chance race. His crew working hard to get that car back in the race, and well, it has lasted only one short lap. As Mike Eddy now out in front, Bob Seneker a couple of car lengths behind, and then we see the black number 22 of J.D. Summers. Good race going on back there for 5th spot between Brad Loney and on the outside there in the orange car, Joe Knott.
A couple of weeks ago at Indianapolis Raceway Park, both of these drivers were late getting their cars in the tech inspection line. As a result, they were second round qualifiers, and both actually turned in qualifying laps faster than pole sitter Glenn Allen Jr. And Joe Knott, you know, this youth movement here between Joe Knott and Brad Loney, they're racing early like it's late in the going.
And Glenn Allen Jr. likewise, the number 15 car, trying to make his move, working his way up towards the back end of the number 7 of Gary St. Amant now. He started quite a bit further back in the field, but has started to move. Actually, he started right behind Gary St. Amant, and those two are racing for position right now on the racetrack.
Glenn Allen made only 2 practice laps. The engine sounded sour. He brought it in. They pulled the head off, and a couple of push rods. The ends had literally snapped off of him. He says, though, that that's the same engine that he ran into second place at Raceway Park. He was that close to not finishing at IRP. Fortunate to find it in hot laps today. That's all the practice that he got, and still turned in the 11th best qualifying time.
The number 3 car of Yale Conley back out onto the racetrack, a couple of laps down, and there continues to be the battle between St. Amant and Glenn Allen Jr. Ralph Shaheen has more on Yale Conley.
Brian, you might remember Yale Conley's involved in that last chance race accident. In that accident, the steering rack became loose, and he's having problems getting a lot of vibration and having trouble steering the number 3 tonight.
What a shame, Brian, because that is a brand new race car. Dr. Conley showed up from West Virginia. He met the car here. It was the first time that he had seen it and had great hopes for its performance this evening.
Well, then it was cosmetically challenged, but his crew did a great job getting that car looking good in short order. It's amazing to me how well these crews can get a car that is just garbage looking like a real race car, and unless you look very, very close indeed, both the Yale Conley's car and several of the others look extremely good. It's only Mike Miller's car that's very obviously a patch job.
Well, as an interest getter for the fans, ASA historically has always locked in maybe the top 20 qualifiers, and then everybody else has to go into a last chance race. And you see a lot of battling, jockeying for position early, and they may want to rethink that after the incident that nearly kept 5 guys from racing here this evening.
There's Brad Loney, and he is having his troubles moving a bit backwards through the field, while Joe Knott has kind of dispensed with him and moved on up front. Now the next to challenge there behind Brad Loney is the 87 car of Tony Raines. So Loney apparently having some handling problems. A couple of drivers moving forward, and Loney having trouble holding on to his positions.
And we've got a yellow as Ted Smokestad has come to a crawl in turn number 2. Now he gets the machine refired and continues, does not lose a lap.
Ted Smokestad in the Super America Red Dog Beer Chevrolet, the cause for an early caution here in the Jennerstown 250. The leader continues to be Mike Eddy, so what else is new? We'll try to update you if anything changes. Welcome back to the premier short track racing series in the country, perhaps on the planet. We're not sure where else they do this. There's the car of Ted Smokestad, the number 32 Super America automobile. It came to an unexplained halt, perhaps a plug wire or something of that nature. In any case, he was down on power, managed to lurch back to a start, go into the pit. That is why we are under a caution right now as Smokestad returns to the racetrack.
And if you have a photographic memory, recollecting from the last race, that blue is a little different on the Super America machine. Ted says that he's changed the color because this is the one that he had so much success with in racing up in Minnesota.
Ralph, any more information about the 32?
He said to his crew that he got together with Ray Skillman in the 27 car, and that knocked off the left front quarter panel in the 32. They brought it in, brought out the duct tape, taped it up, put it back together, and he's back out on the racetrack. Of course, now he's at the tail end of the cars.
Meanwhile, Brian, Mike Miller has moved from 31st in the start. He's already picked up 6 positions with the right front corner. He had no idea what he had. He now runs 25th.
No idea how that car would handle. We're back under green. We'll continue to follow the saga of the number 2 driver in the points standings here for the Hooters Super Cup competition over the course of the season. That being the number 18 car, the Tomato Can 18 as we are familiarly calling it, but it's got kind of an Alaska white nose on it tonight.
And there is Brad Loney, car number 33 to the inside. Moving to the outside is Tony Raines in the car number 87. Raines picks up a position. I thought we might see Brad Loney come in under that caution, but he did not want to give up track position quite this early. He's going to try to fight it and hope that the car comes to him. We qualified when it was about 20 degrees warmer and under on again, off again, partly sunny, partly cloudy skies. And a lot of these guys with more experience here at Jennerstown may have had a little better idea on how to set the chassis up. Apparently this young team has just guessed wrong at the start.
Well, Brad Loney unsuccessfully trying to hold off the advances of Glenn Allen Jr. Allen on the outside now. Loney still trying to fight him off on the inside as the 87 of Tony Raines is staying out of trouble in front of these two. Chasing the leader, Mike Eddy. Behind him, it's Bob Seneker, J.D. Summer, and Ken Stauffer. The front 2 rows, the first 4 drivers, are still the same as they were at the outset of this race.
Well, we kind of wonder what the weather might bring before this evening is over. Remember, we have to get at least 50% of the race in for it to constitute a complete race. Now, in a short sprint type ASA race, 250 laps, that's only 126 circuits. So I think you're going to see guys running just as hard as they can, as early as they can, Brian, in the event that weather would be a factor.
It did look as though weather would be a factor, and everything we've heard from the Weather Service says that the front that was with us this afternoon causing the unstable weather has passed. The tail end of that has passed, and indeed, as we looked over our shoulders at the start of the show there, the skies were clearing, the sun was setting under very clear skies, so we would not expect weather to be a factor, but the temperature certainly is. And now, what would be your guess as to how they might have set the car up different this afternoon to anticipate cooler temperatures tonight so that they would have a good handling race car if conditions did change?
Generally speaking, the cooler it is, the tighter the car is, or the more it tends to push. So maybe they set the car up to run just a little bit looser for a cooler, damper kind of condition. And obviously, a couple of guys like Mike Eddy and Bob Seneker know how to do just that. Now, a great battle for 5th position between Joe Knott and Brian Refner. Refner, who sat on the pole here as a rookie in October 1994.
Well, they started 6th and 8th, respectively, not in the 6th position at the start of the race. Brian Refner 8th, while Brad Loney, who started 5th, has been slipping back with handling problems. These two guys are advancing through the field.
Loney's position seems to have stabilized for the time being. It looks like Joe Knott, who's holding up the parade at this juncture, as Refner is right there, so is Raines, Glenn Allen, there's Brad Loney, all running nose to tail. Look at Refner take a peek to the low side of Joe Knott's car number 48.
Joe Knott liked the way his car worked so well with Mark Martin's hood on it. He just said he wasn't going to give it back.
Well, I don't know that that's quite the way it worked, but that makes for some interesting copy.
There's an obvious Valvoline white hood on the red car number 48 of Joe Knott as Brian Refner takes a peek inside, gives him a little nudge from the back, trying everything that these short track drivers have in their arsenal of weapons to get around. Now they're dealing with a little bit of a situation out there as Joe Knott moves even further to the outside. Refner still trying to work the inside line on him.
And you can see Brian is even going below the yellow line. Watch him there exiting turn number 2, down 2 and slightly below that yellow line, but it's awfully hard to get a good run off the corner when you do that. And as we were watching this battle, Mike Eddy has slowed. He's skidded a little bit sideways coming off turn number 4. One of the cars has dumped some oil as there's several cars out of shape coming off that 4th turn. Kent Stauffer spun the Popa Joe's Ford Thunderbird exiting that turn but kept going. Mike Eddy nearly lost it as we watched a battle for position between Joe Knott and Tony Raines. There was all kinds of activity coming off turn 4.
Well, we'll have to get to the bottom of what's going on. In any case, we are under caution. Nothing has changed with regards to the order, and no one is into the wall or has made any obvious problem or any problem obvious to us. While we were watching Joe Knott and Brian Refner go at it, their battle had allowed the gap in front of Joe Knott to open up significantly. Now that, of course, is closed down under the yellow. Here's another look at these two going at it.
And this was coming off turn number 4, I think, where all the problems took place. Now, you can see that Knott was on the brakes. He saw guys checking up in front of him. You can see Kent Stauffer, the end of the spin there for car number 98. And I think what happened, we see that Bobby Archer's car number 93 has come on pit road. And I think that Big Wheel Rossi Featherlight Pontiac has lost some rear end grease or something there. They've got the right side of the car up and they're checking. Another angle, this one from our front straightaway wall camera. And somebody apparently did make contact with the wall right there.
Well, that's a black car, and let's go down to Ralph Shaheen, who has a better idea of just what was going on. Ralph?
The car that you're looking at is the car number 93. That is Bobby Archer. Bobby came up the front straightaway. The car went all the way up into the wall, and he rubbed the entire right side of the 93 all the way down the front stretch. There is a strip of fluid that is right on the racing line down the entire front straightaway and down into turn number 1. We can see it shining up off of the racetrack surface. We're trying to make our way now down towards Bobby Archer to get official word on what went wrong with the car.
While the cars work on the crews, we're going to take a quick break, give Ralph a chance to make his way down to that end of the pit. These are the way they stack up after 28 of the 250 laps. We'll have some more for you when we come back. Speedway, there's the crew of the 93 car pushing it back behind the wall. Apparently the night is over for the driver of that car, and Ralph Shaheen is down in the infield with the driver.
Bobby, what was it that sent you into the wall?
I wish I knew for sure. You know, 1 minute I was accelerating on the corner, and then it just stepped right, and it was a pretty solid hit, and it broke the rear end housing, and we oiled up the track a little bit, but, you know, just paying my dues.
Now, the crew took your car back behind the wall. Any chance of getting it back in tonight?
It's a long shot. You know, it actually broke the rear end housing, and so it need a whole new rear end, and I don't think we've got one to put in the car.
Unfortunately for you, you're the one driver we get to ask this question to. How is the track surface?
Well, for my car, it was very slippery. In fact, I lost a couple positions early on, but, you know, as the race in IRP a couple weeks ago showed, you got to have some patience. And I was just riding it out. You know, I talked to the crew a couple of times, but for my car, it was very slippery.
Slippery conditions, gentlemen, means that you might see the veterans come to the forefront here tonight.
And Bobby Archer is, of course, a veteran, but if you're a veteran stock car racing fan, you may not recognize the name. He's a very accomplished road racer in IMSA and SCCA, has a number of championships to his credit, and is, in fact, a 7-time ice racing champion, but he's found the sledding a little bit tough thus far in ASA. Didn't qualify at Columbus, finished 26th at Toledo, 20th at IRP, and an early exit here tonight at Jennerstown.
I have one comment to make about Archer's statement that he's not sure if they can get it fixed. Well, we've seen crews come to each other's aid here this afternoon, unlike in any other thing that you could imagine. I mean, the crowd around Mike Miller's car of crew members wearing other uniforms was unbelievable. The obvious gift was, of course, the front end fiberglass off of Tom Jones' car, but what you didn't see, and we did this afternoon, folks, are crews from just about, I mean, members of just about every crew on pit road. So if Bobby Archer, you know, they'll get out there. If there's a rear end to be found, they'll stick it under his car and get him back out on the racetrack. That's just the way these guys are.
And it's been that way since the inception of this sanctioning body. It's been one of the hallmarks of ASA racing. A lot of the teams are family operations, but this is one big family.
While the cars are still circling the racetrack, we're going to take the opportunity to cut away from the action once again. Rest assured, though, we'll be here when you come back after listening to these important messages. This telecast is a copyrighted production of Group 5 Sports, a division of Group 5 Sales Incorporated. Any use, rebroadcast, or other transmission of this telecast without the written consent of Group 5 Sports is prohibited.
American Speed Association has seen 4 different winners at Jennerstown. Mike Eddy, the only multiple winner. He's done it 3 times. Bob Seneker, Tom Jones, and Glenn Allen with a victory apiece. As the green flag waves once again, Mike Eddy has led all 36 laps thus far.
And has won all 3 races of the 1995 season. Mike Eddy, the veteran driver, being chased by another veteran driver, Bob Seneker in the number 84. Those two started on the front row. J.D. Summers and Kent Stauffer, who started a row behind them, are still in the 3rd and 4th positions on the racetrack. Everything that's gone on so far has kind of gone on behind them, because now Joe Knott, who started 6th, has moved up to 5th. Brad Loney, who started 5th, has moved back. Things have shuffled around just a little bit. We're going to go once again down to Ralph Shaheen, who will update us on another driver having his troubles here today.
Dennis Lampman is in the pits. Dennis, what's wrong with your car? Jim Lampman is working on it. That's Dennis's brother. Looks like some sort of an electrical problem here, gentlemen. This is the same thing we saw with Jim Seeger's car, Tony Roselli's or Ernie Roselli's car. They're having electrical problems. Some of the teams are saying water during the raining period earlier today has seeped into some of the engines, causing some problems with electrics.
You might have noticed a different paint job on Dennis Lampman's car. The front is painted what he calls IROC yellow, and the next color is IROC Kulwicki orange. Of course, the Lampman family very close friends with the late Alan Kulwicki. That was the color of the IROC car that Alan raced in Daytona in February of 1993. A little tribute to the late great Alan Kulwicki, a former ASA driver, by the way.
Dennis Lampman's fortunes have not been good at all over the last 2 seasons. After winning his career first victory at Berlin Raceway in 1993, the best he could muster was a single top 10 last year and 8th at Minnesota at the State Fairgrounds. And this year's 3 runs thus far, a 21st, a 30th, and a 31st. Certainly not an indication as to his driving ability, but just a reflection of the bad luck this team has had.
We're watching a battle for 4th place on the racetrack. Brian Reffner there and Joe Knott, who has been locked in combat throughout the entire race. That's actually for 5th place. Joe Knott, starting 6th, has moved up to 5th. Brian Reffner, who started actually in 8th place, has moved up behind Joe Knott. Those two battling for 5th position on the racetrack right now. It's a good close race between these two. No one able to get an obvious edge just yet. Sneaking into the picture from behind, Tony Raines, perhaps waiting to see what goes on among those two drivers.
And it's a treacherous racetrack, Brian, at this point. By that I mean it's a 1.5 groove racetrack. There's a good line and then there's a fair line, but you just can't get enough bite to come off the corner. We watched Glenn Allen. You could just see him there repeatedly going to the low side of Tony Raines. Look at the top of your screen. He dives down low, but you can't get a real good bite off the corner, so Raines continues to get the run. It's exactly the same thing that's going on between the 2 cars right in front of them. Reffner trying the low side and Joe Knott the high side.
Well, there's Glenn Allen trying to get underneath right in front. Reffner doing the same thing to Joe Knott, as you just mentioned. They even get a couple of wheels down on that lighter colored apron down there in an effort to get a little bit of extra bite from the Goodyears on on the inside of the racetrack. But it does seem to be the most consistent groove is the one that all the front runners are using, and the guys that are trying to get past are able to hold off the attempts by hanging on to that same line around the racetrack.
The reason we're watching 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, this is the best racing right now. Mike Eddy continues to lead. Bob Seneker just laying in wait about 3 car lengths back. And then as J.D. Summers, he's 3rd all by himself, and Ken Stauffer has also separated himself from this 5th place battle between Knott and Ruffner.
Right now, the only challenge to Mike Eddy is coming from Bob Seneker. There's a lot of distance back to 3rd and a lot of distance back to 4th. So this is the race we're watching for 5th. Currently led by Joe Knott in the number 48 car there, the Alan Knott Valvoline Raby Ford, and constantly being pressed there by the number 5 car of Brian Ruffner, while behind there's a similar battle going on between Tony Raines and Glenn Allen Jr.
Joe Knott, of course, in his 3rd ASA season. Look at Raines now trying to work the high side of Ruffner. It was a minute ago Glenn Allen Jr. alongside Tony Raines, and now Tony, maybe that outside groove is beginning to come in. Look at Allen now go to the high side, and he'll try to follow behind Raines as very quickly he's gone by both Ruffner and Knott.
Raines just found a little something extra out there, and you're right. Now Glenn Allen has seen the successful move by Tony Raines and has followed it. Just like that, Joe Knott moves back to 8th place or 7th place in the race, and 5th and 6th have been taken over by the 2 guys who were trying to get around earlier.
And if they can get a bite, if there's enough rubber in that outside groove for the right rear tire to get traction, it will be faster because they don't have to pinch the cart down so hard into the corners. They can let it roll a little bit freer up toward the top side. They don't scrub off as many RPMs, and that's why they were able to get around Joe Knott, as Knott now is falling off the pace in car number 48 as he's sliding very rapidly backwards.
Well, something that went very right for Tony Raines and for Glenn Allen Jr. apparently was a function of something going slightly wrong for Joe Knott as he is sliding back, as you said. A couple of cars in danger of going a lap down here. In fact, just as we speak, the number 36 car of Cindy Peterson goes a lap down to the leader, Mike Eddy, and to Bob Seneker. Meanwhile, here's Tony Raines and Glenn Allen Jr. Tony Raines, who had a very mixed success last year. Well, what does he think about the new 1995 season in the 87 car?
Well, it's going good. We've been fast the last couple races, but we've just had little minor problems that we'll get worked out. And I mean, I think once we get our stride, we're going to be faster everywhere. It's just taking a little while getting used to, my input to the car and getting to know Howard and the crew and everybody. Once we get gelled up, I think we'll be tough.
And no doubt they will be. The one that he's talked about, Howie Ledow, has been the crew chief for several Rookies of the Year in ASA. He's a guy that a lot of folks would like to have as a crew chief. Maybe the most difficulty they have is neither one of them says a whole lot. So maybe the communication is just not there. Not that they communicate poorly, they just don't talk much at all.
Back up front to Mike Eddy and Bob Seneker. Seneker had been a little bit closer than this on several occasions, and apparently as they begin to move into traffic right now, he has backed off a little bit. Just keeping Mike Eddy in his gun sights while Mike Eddy negotiates traffic. Bob Seneker watches how he does it, and now the next victim to be the number 50 car of Eddie Sharp. Eddie Sharp, the one who sort of initiated the problem during the last chance race, got a little bit loose coming out of turn 2, and in his words, while he was trying to straighten it up, the rest of them tried to get around him a little quicker than they might have. It was in the very first lap of that last chance race, and it's not clear to me and obvious, except that these guys are racers, just why they were so eager to get around Eddie Sharp as he was trying to get his car hauled back in.
Glenn Gauld has pulled in off the backstretch. Meanwhile, Dennis Lampman has come back out on the racetrack. And it may be too early in the going, Brian, to make any really significant prognostications, but this is vintage Bob Seneker. I mean, this is what we're accustomed to historically from these two guys. Mike Eddy running as hard as he has to, as long as he can, and Bob Seneker just kind of laying in wait, kind of like the lion waiting for that lamb to falter. Seneker has the strongest car, and it's just my prediction at this point.
Why did I shudder in just a moment there when you used the word lamb to refer to Mike Eddy?
Well, that's kind of interesting juxtaposition, wasn't it?
Ralph Shaheen down in the infield. A little more information about the flight of the 48 car. Ralph?
Well, Joey Knott's car is real loose on him right now, Brian, so he's just trying to keep it out on the racetrack until he can get a chance to come in here maybe under a yellow and tighten the car up. Glenn Gauld has just brought the number 30 into the pits. A lot of smoke coming in from the valve cover area of the car. We're going to try and wait and see if we get a chance to talk to the crew once they've had a chance to look at it.
Well, Well, just how bad the situation is for Joe Knott might be reflected by the fact that he's racing with Mike Miller, who has moved up into 20th on the racetrack right now. And Joe Knott sliding back from 5th place where he was alongside Mike Miller, who's been trying to come up from the back of the field.
There are your leaders. Mike Eddy and Bob Seneca moving into turn number 3. In 3rd position remains Jay Summers. But now into 4th has come Tony Raines with Glenn Allen Jr. up to 5th, Refner to 6th, as Kent Stauffer's begun to slide backwards. He's fallen now back into 7th position.
Let's go down once again. Ralph Shaheen very busy down on pit road. What's the story this time?
Well, we've caught up to Glenn Galt. Glenn, a lot of smoke from under the hood. What's wrong with the car?
Well, we started picking up some with the motors smoking on us there. I don't know whether we have a leak or we have a piston going out, but I had to pull out because it was smoking pretty bad.
Right now, the regional favorite is in the pit area.
Glenn Galt, of course, a many-time champion here at Jennerstown Speedway, has run Clearfield, Pennsylvania in the Motordrome. This is his neck of the woods, and he really wanted to perform well tonight for his local fans. In the number 30 car, the American Title and Trust Chevrolet, Glenn Galt may be an early night in the shower for him. His crew working hard to see if they can get him back in the race. A couple of drivers that we're noticing have begun to fall back a bit as Brad Loney and car number 53, Scott Hansen, have fallen off the pace. And there they are, 8th, 9th, and 10th positions. Now, Dave Sensiva is up to 10th spot. He started back in 19th, finished 3rd here in October, and of course was the Rookie of the Year. Talk about a sophomore slump. He's been feeling it big time. Sensiva really needs a good run tonight, and he's got it in the early going. Alongside Loney, and you can see the handling problems that Loney continues to fight there as his car got a little bit loose, and Sensiva able to drive right on by. Alongside now there, the number 75 entry, that is the Pyro Split-Fire All-City Chevrolet of Jeff Neal. We've said many times the best looking race car on the track, and it is certainly a striking looking automobile, but Jeff Neal having a little bit of difficulty here tonight. And also closing right behind Brad Loney, there's that silver, red, and blue car number 07. That's the Maisto Yoder Ford Thunderbird of Todd Forbes, who just made a shambles in the last chance race. Qualified just a couple of spots out of the top 20, and he was only a couple of tenths away from the pole position, but he was extremely strong in that last chance race, and as expected, he's moving up through the pack. And we've got a car hard into the wall, 2 of them, in fact. Bill Baird is involved, as is Carl James down in turn number 1. And you can see that is Bill Baird's disabled black and red car number 26 as it's gone to the bottom of the racetrack after hard contact with the outside retaining wall. The Saturn Machine United Refractory Chevrolet, and there's the number 8 entry there of Carl James out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, and the Carbright Odessa Chevrolet. The damage to James' car obviously much less than to the car of number 26 of Bill Baird. While these two guys try to get themselves back into the pit and figure out what's going on, there's Bill Baird taking the wheel off. We'll try to collect up the story for you, and we'll be right back in just a moment. Pass it on. When your car's hanging from the wrecker cable, it's not a good thing, and that's the situation for the number 26 car there. Bill Baird out of Sturgis, Kentucky, watching his car go off the track on the wrecker. After an incident down there in turn number 1, actually in the straightaway, was what set it up. I believe we have a look at it here for you, and let's see if we can tell anything from this shot at all about what happened to Bill Baird. Watching for that black car, I think you could see him a little bit out of shape as he was trying to maybe put a move on Carl James in car number 8. Now let's look from the other angle. They've already made contact. There's Baird sliding to the low side and James spinning up high, and a couple of other drivers had to take really quick evasive action. I'm not sure who that was. I think it might have been Brett Bell in car number 56 that narrowly avoided collecting Carl James up in turn number 1, and that's disappointing for Bill Baird. Last year he was a rookie with ASA, had very limited asphalt experience, and was really looking good, and Ralph is with him right now.
Well, Bill, you and Carl James are racing pretty hard there before the incident. What took place?
I don't know. One of the rookies coming down the back stretch, I was just in the inside of him, and he just turned directly left into me. I saw him coming, but I couldn't do anything about it. We was in the straight stretch.
Bill Baird's car is torn up pretty good, gentlemen. His night is done, but Brian Refner in the number 5 car is still out on the race, but he is suffering a problem with his power steering unit. He has broken his power steering unit, so they're struggling right now to get him in good shape so he can be competitive here tonight.
We'll take another cutaway from the action here. Well, on second thought, maybe we won't. And my comment about Brian Refter losing his power steering just reminds me that Mike Eddy doesn't even use power steering in his car, so it's a level playing field for those two.
I guess we'll quickly find out what kind of arms Brian Refter's got as Mike Eddy once again leads them into turn number 1 as he's done all 73 circuits thus far. Quick rundown of the top 10. It's Mike Eddy, Bob Seneker, J.D. Summers is 3rd, Tony Raines up to 4th with Glenn Allen Jr. from 11th at the start to 5th. Kent Stauffer is in 6th position. Tony Roper runs in 7th as we got problems down in turn number 3. It looks like Brad Loney is involved. There's a white car at the bottom of the racetrack. That is Dr. Yale Conley. Does not look like Loney's car was badly damaged. We'll get a better shot as he tagged the wall with the right rear corner up in turn number 3. And he had just come on pit road, and that's what can happen. Amazingly, it looks cosmetic, and that may be it for Brad Loney.
And perhaps also for Dr. Yale Conley as the leader, Mike Eddy, comes up on the incident there. Yale Conley getting around the racetrack to join the tail end of the field. We'll reset it for you in a moment. This is the way it is right now.
Well, maybe we'll now get a chance to give you that top 10 rundown that we were working on when we were rudely interrupted by Dr. Yale Conley and Brad Loney on the backstretch. It's Mike Eddy, Bob Seneker, J.D. Summers, Tony Raines, and Glenn Allen Jr., the top 5. 6th through 10th is Kent Stauffer. Tony Roper having a good run. 8th is Gary St. Amant. 9th is Scott Hansen. And 10th is Dave Sensiba. And that's the top 10.
Motorhome facilities for Group 5 sports and the AC-Delco Challenge Series are provided by Winnebago Industries. For more information about Winnebago, call 1-800-643-4892 or ask Brad Loney next time you see him. Getting ready to go green, and there is the drop of the flag right there with Mike Eddy, Bob Seneker still running up front, and 3rd on the racetrack right now, the number 56 machine of Brett Bell, who is down a lap. Then it's J.D. Summers still in 3rd. As you mentioned before, things much the same as they were up front with a few lap cars mixed in.
Tony Raines going to work on J.D. Summers after that caution flag. Raines and Glenn Allen, who appeared to be closing on the 3rd place car, now will get a good shot at him. That battle that we're looking at there, I believe, is for like 8th, 9th, and 10th positions. Gary St. Amant in car number 53, Scott Hansen, then Dave Sensiba in car number 4 as they work their way around what usually is the machine, the blue and yellow one driven by Randy Larson. Tonight it is Tom Jones after that pre-race incident.
Mike Eddy still running up front, and I have to make the comment about Mike Miller, who started 31st, is now in 12th position, challenging Jeff Neal for the number 11 spot on the racetrack. And he had his car down on pit road at least 3 times, making some handling changes to a car that he had no idea how it would run. But right now, of course, we mentioned Brad Loney, the latest victim here, as he got around out there. Ralph Shaheen has more information about the 33.
Brian, it was all cosmetic damage in that incident with Yale Conley. They did change left side tires, and Brad is already making the move up through the back end of the pack. He's already passed 3 or 4 cars and is setting his sights on Dennis Lamon already.
You know, he was struggling earlier, so that might have been a blessing in disguise for Brad.
Well, he started up front there, as you had mentioned before. Reputation as a good racer and a marginal qualifier. He did a great job.
No, that's used to be. Used to be. He's been
used to be. Used to be, and he's put that car in the number 5 position. We're going to give you a whole top 20 rundown here, and we hope that you see your favorite driver as we look down the field summary here and watch Brad Loney in the number 33 entry there. And now we go back up front to Mike Eddy, who's leading this race, as he has from virtually the drop of the green flag, taking the lead away from Bob Seneker on the very first lap of the race. And now that those two have cleared traffic, they've settled back down to doing what they had been doing before.
And it's been interesting to watch the two are utilizing totally different lines around the racetrack. Mike Eddy generally preferring the lower groove in turns 1 and 2. Bob Seneker running a higher line in 1 and 2. Then they almost roll reverse in turns 3 and 4 with Eddy going a little bit high. There, see Seneker way up out of what was the early race groove in car number 84. Apparently the car likes to run up there.
Here's the 3rd place battle as the 22 car of J.D. Summer just disappeared out of the screen, and in 4th spot now is the 87 there of Tony Raines, who really has a great season ahead of him here. He seems to have things, in his own words, you know, working out some communication problems with his crew chief, Howie Leddow. Of course, Howie Leddow, a proven winner in the ASA, and there's J.D. Summers now trying to get past the lap car number 56 there of Brett Bell, while Tony Tony Raines is dealing with Glenn Allen Jr.
Yeah, Tony really can't worry too much about J.D. Summers at this juncture because Glenn Allen is really putting the pressure on. I think Tony's car wants to run up the racetrack a little bit, but he's got to protect the low line because that's where Glenn's car goes its best.
And likewise, J.D. Summers' car seems to like that high side of the racetrack. He doesn't have anybody trying to dig down underneath him right now to worry about. But that is the problem for Tony Raines, trying to run high where his car wants to, but protect the low line, as you said, Rob. And, well, Glenn Allen Jr. is going to show him the nose of that 15 car every chance he gets.
Still a long way to go. 88 of 250 laps completed. And as we get farther into this race, the threat of ill weather, shortening it, becomes less and less. The skies do look good at this point. I think we're going to run it all the way tonight.
Definitely going to run it all the way if, like we said before, the clearing skies to the west of us where the weather comes from or any indication, our worries are over. The track is dry. It is cool. That has certainly caused some early handling problems that the crews are sorting out right now in the Jennerstown 250 as we continue to look at Tony Raines and the number 87 entry there, the Baker Enterprises clean burn Pontiac, with how he let out the crew chief, and the number 15 car there of Glenn Allen Jr., who we mentioned at the top of the show was a likely challenger for Mike Eddy, but that challenge has not risen yet.
No, but he's moving toward the front. Remember, he started back in 11th position. There's Kent Stauffer. He spun earlier while running in 4th, maintained the position after the spin. Now he's fallen back a couple of spots. And Tony Roper, who's having a really strong ride. Roper is up to 6th, started deep in the top 20, and he's pulled in right behind Stauffer's red, white, and blue car number 98.
Roper actually starting 9th tonight, but has maintained a nice steady pace there to continue to run along with Kent Stauffer, who had started 4th. So things are shuffled around quite a bit on the racetrack, and they continue to do so here. Dave Sensiba and Gary St. Amant just behind this pair.
Yeah, you did mention that Roper started 9th. I watched him at the drop of the green. He dropped several positions in the first couple of laps, but showed some restraint and patience. Finally got to the bottom, and he drifted up at the start of the race. He dropped back 4 or 5 spots, and now is beginning to work his way to the front, and we've got more trouble this time coming off turn number 4. It looks like Mike Miller was involved in car number 18, along with Rick Beebe in the engine armor car number 6.
Apparently no major damage to the car of Miller nor to that of Beebe as he gets out, and the engine armor number 6 automobile looks as good as it did when it started this race. Beebe was in the last chance race and started his car in 26th position. He managed to finish 6th in the last chance and stay out of trouble. And he's back on the racetrack. No apparent harm done to either the 18 car or the 6. Mike Eddy in the number 88 Goodwrench Pontiac leads the Jennerstown 250. That's big news. He has led all 94 laps. The AC-Delco Challenge Series, the premier short track racing series, has joined forces with Short Track Racing Magazine, the premier publication geared to short track racing fans. For subscription information, call 1-800-468-7876. That's Short Track Racing Magazine. A young fan in the stands. We're going to right now go down to the inside. Ralph Shaheen's with Mike Miller.
Boy, big problems for Mike Miller's rear end right now. He did a beautiful job of spinning the car on the front straightaway and keeping it off the wall, Mike, but what's wrong with the rear end now?
Something broke in the panhard bar. I don't know. It's been a long day, believe me.
Well, he spun it around on the front stretch, gentlemen. Did a beautiful job of driving to keep it off the wall. I know he's frustrated. And as we get set to go back to green.
Back to green flag racing. A long day indeed for Mike Miller. The last chance race in which he was involved in a mishap ended at about 5 o'clock this afternoon. The crew had 4 hours, and they used every second of it to try to get that car back in the race. It looks as though their efforts were succeeding quite well up to now, but things have taken a turn for the worse for the driver and the car, number 18, the Atlantic Communications Pontiac.
And the 4th place battle has now become the 3rd position war as Tony Raines and Glenn Allen Jr. have each picked up a spot as J.D. Summers, the rookie driver who was in 3rd, brought his machine on pit road under caution.
The two leaders have stayed out, Mike Eddy and Bob Seneker. Tony Raines 3rd, Glenn Allen Jr. 4th. Looking at them right now. J.D. Summer buried a little bit further back in the field, did come in and make a pit stop, and will now have to try to undo his losses.
And we will see, I think, 1 pit stop being the rule of the day here tonight. The tire wear should not be a factor. They will definitely need at least 1 fuel stop.
Still looking in on the battle for 3rd between Tony Raines, the number 87 car, Glenn Allen Jr. in the 15.
Glenn Allen has a quicker car. You know, they've run in this posture now for a whole bunch of laps. And that's just the way that Glenn Allen Jr. dogged Mike Eddy most of the night at Indianapolis Raceway Park a couple of weeks ago. And he would love to get a shot, I'm sure, at Bob Seneker and Mike Eddy, as they have now eased away from the third-place car of Tony Raines.
We're less than halfway through this race, and Glenn Allen Jr., as young as he is, has learned patience is what it takes to win these races. And rest assured, he will get his share of victories in the American Speed Association if he continues to show the kind of patience he's demonstrating right now and working Tony Raines. Tony Raines, though, giving up nothing in terms of experience and a little bit of patience of his own and just holding his line. Glenn Allen trying to get under, but then Tony Raines just patiently uses the drive out of the turn to stay right where he was.
These young drivers both have reputations as being aggressive but clean and smooth. That wasn't always that way for Glenn Allen. Came to ASA about 8 years ago as a 16-year-old, and as we've mentioned many times, had a hard time just keeping the thing pointed straight. He's really matured over the last 2 or 3 seasons. Now is one of the smoothest drivers on the circuit. And though he, I'm sure, realizes that Mike Eddy and Bob Seneker are getting away just a little bit, he also knows that we probably will see at least one more caution. What he does not want to do at this point, Brian, is overwork the right side tires and maybe end up going way backwards. Then he'd have a hard time even making up any distance on pit road. Now, if he can just stay in the top 3 or 4, wait for the opportune caution, and then let his crew put him back out in position for a possible win.
It all sounds so complicated, but we also heard Mike Eddy say at the very top of the show about how it's a different Mike Eddy that's racing out there tonight than a young Mike Eddy who used to think he had to charge out there and lead every lap. Well, he has led every lap, and maybe he hasn't been trying all that hard. The work that was done that got him out there took place a long time before the green flag dropped.
The margin between Mike Eddy and Bob Seneker has remained stable most of the night at about half a dozen car lengths. It's like Seneker is just lurking there. He doesn't want to run right behind Mike Eddy. You're not going to intimidate him. I know I called him a lamb, but he's not a lamb that can be easily intimidated. Seneker's just going to wait it out.
Well, he ought to be able to recall from memory every square inch of the rear end of Mike Eddy's car by now, as long as he's followed him around. There's a battle for 7th place on the racetrack right now, involving number 7, Gary St. Amant, and the 98 car of Ken Stauffer that started 4th at the beginning of this race.
Just in front of these two, Tony Roper has moved up to 5th position, and you just saw momentarily the number 4 of Dave Senziva. It is again Ken Stauffer, who seems on long runs to lose just a little ground, as now Gary St. Amant brings that Wins Ford Thunderbird into challenge, and he's in 7th position.
And lurking might also apply to the number 53 car of Scott Hansen, who has demonstrated more than his share of patience over the years in winning races for the American Speed Association. There he is, just kind of poised back there in the 53 car, watching Gary St. Amant in his effort with Ken Stauffer.
I'm sure Scott, by most standards, would be deemed to have a good season thus far, but by his measure, it has not been especially good. 6th at Columbus, 10th at Toledo, 6th at Raceway Park. It's got him 5th in the standings, but Scott is normally accustomed to challenging for a win. Remember, at the midpoint of last year, he vacated this team. The Gunderman Racing Stable started his own operation, had a pretty good second half of the season, and came back expecting maybe to be a championship contender, and still may be, but they just haven't found their stride yet in the early going of 95. He does, however, have one of the new Monte Carlo bodies, and if you're a race fan and you're wondering why, now that Chevrolet has introduced the Monte Carlo, do so many of the ASA teams still run the Lumina body? It's because the company that manufactures them got a little bit behind in their manufacturing process. There's still only about a half dozen of them available.
Scott Hansen with a pair of top 5 finishes here at Jennerstown, 3 finishes in the top 10. We go back to the leader, Mike Eddy, who has led every lap so far, and Bob Seneker has chased him all the way. We'll be back.
Hi, I'm Josh Duval. If you ever wanted to be a young racer, it's easy. If you have a question about racing your favorite driver, write it down on a card and send it to me. We'll have one of our drivers or officials answer for you on the air. If your question is selected, we'll send you a nifty racing hat and t-shirt. So send your questions to Young Racers, P.O. Box 26792, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28221.
Welcome back to Jennerstown, Pennsylvania. The American Speed Association's AC-Delco Challenge Series, America's premier short track racing series, is coming at you. And right now, Mike Eddy working his way into the traffic again with Bob Seneker hot on his heels and moving up, charging hard. The number 87 of Tony Raines, who has dispensed with Glenn Allen Jr. And just out of your picture, he's making a run at the 2 leaders.
Actually, about 10 cars have begun to narrow the gap a little bit between themselves and the leader, Mike Eddy. We're still showing, I think, 18 cars on the lead lap. Eddy leads. Seneca remains about half a dozen car lengths back. And yes, Raines is closing on the pair.
A lot of traffic in between them, though. There's the 25 car we saw earlier in the race. Jim Seeger taking the ETR E&L Cleanburn Chevrolet down into pit road. Apparently they have made repairs, and he's back out there, having lost several laps. Is now in between the leader, Mike Eddy, and this man, Bob Seneca, in the 84. Chasing him in second spot as he has been throughout this entire race.
And Jeff Neal in the split fire Chevrolet car number 75 just went a lap down, and that's a surprise. We expected a strong run from Jeff tonight. He had a great run at IRP, finishing in 4th position behind Mike Eddy, Glenn Allen, and Butch Miller.
Mike Eddy just continues to be amazing, however, in his total domination of this season thus far. And you have to think that the law of averages being what it is, that streak would come to an end just all by itself somehow, because, well, so far no one has been able to end the streak of Mike Eddy and just the stranglehold that he has on this season so far. He is so well prepared. He is so mentally focused, and his crew just gives him a good race car every time he goes out there and acts just like it's another day at the office. Let's lead all the laps and win another one.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, when we looked at the schedule, the first half dozen races, it's entirely possible he could win the first 6 races. For our viewers and for ourselves and for the other competitors, I guess you'd have to say we hope that doesn't happen, but it just shows you how dominant he has been in ASA over the last several years. Lost the last couple of championships, but was so close in each of the last 2 years.
Well, the way that Mike Eddy has put his stamp on this season kind of reminds you of another black GM Goodwrench automobile driver, and in fact the 2 of them share 7 championships, one in of course down south and the other here in ASA, each of them 7-time champions. And which one will win his 8th championship? Will it be Dale Earnhardt, or will it be this man, Mike Eddy? Midway through the race, 1 leader, there he is. There have been no lead changes, as you might expect, and 21 cars as of the middle of the race remain on the lead lap. That number has changed slightly as we speak.
Yeah, that is Mike Eddy has just put another car lap down. Now he closes in on the midget veteran, Kenny Irwin Jr., who is making his 2nd start in a team machine to Dave Sensiva in car number 4. Kenny having a good run tonight, finally going a lap down, shown in 22nd position. Tony Raines is 3rd. Glenn Allen Jr. runs in 4th position. Tony Roper 5th. Sensiva is 6th. In 7th spot is, I believe, Gary St. Amant. 8th is Brian Refner. 9th is the car who won the last chance race. That is Todd Forbes. And in 10th is the number 53 of Scott Hansen. Now, Brad Loney had on the restart been in about 26th or 27th position. He's moved back up to 13th in car number 33 as he's narrowed the gap between himself and the 12th place car number 44 of Pat Bordeaux.
Just caught a quick glimpse of the 18 car, Mike Miller, going back out on the racetrack. They lost a lot of laps in the pits because we've been green just about since he went in. Nevertheless, the veteran Georgia driver back out there. Here's Mike Eddy continuing to circulate like he's on a rail out there. No problem whatsoever for the 88 GM Goodwrench Pontiac. Things are much as they have been since the beginning of the race for the leader, Mike Eddy. Bob Seneca, a little bit of changing going on behind him. We're at the halfway mark, just past Jennerstown Speedway, just outside the quaint village of Jennerstown, Pennsylvania, in the western part of the state, and the traditional site of the season-ending championship. Here's a battle for 3rd place. We have watched these two go at it all night long, much as we have watched Mike Eddy and Bob Seneca run 1st and 2nd so far.
And this is the best run that Tony Raines has made in this car since starting the season behind the wheel of car number 87, running in 3rd position. The battle had broken off for a while as Glenn Allen seemed content to fall 15 or 20 car lengths back, and now he begins to close once again. You know, we talked about the fact that Mike Eddy's been dominant, but it really hasn't been as bad as it may sound, because if you take 3 races, 3 victories, his combined margin of victory, 3/4 of 1 second. So his average margin of victory has been 1/4 of a second per race. Yes, he's won them all, but none of them have come easily.
Even his lead in the points is not as commanding as you might have expected, although it certainly is going to increase over the former second place points. Mike Miller, he had gone back out on the racetrack briefly, but now it looks as though they are going to push that car in the hauler. Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen, who has a veritable cornucopia of information for us.
Well, gentlemen, we're going to have a yellow flag period right now as one of the cars dropped a piece of debris off the backside of the car on the front straightaway. We should tell you that we expect a tremendous amount of pit stops at this point in time. Todd Forbes is going to have to come in because he's got smoke pouring out the backside of the 07, and crew chief Tom Lucas has no idea why. Scott Hansen is running great. His crew is happy with their car, as is Tony Raines' crew. But one driver who is in a really good position right now is J.D. Summers. He pitted early and is using some pit strategy. So he is going to try to go all the way.
If you're wondering why Ralph Shaheen sounds like he's breaking up a little bit, he was in a sprint down pit road, camera crew in tow, talking all the way. Pretty amazing.
Ricochet Ralph Shaheen, the hardest working man, the standard by which all other pit reporters are judged. He just ran from one end of pit road to the other during that report.
Well, here's where it's all going to come to roost right here. With all the leaders coming on pit road, they've all dropped to the bottom of the racetrack. Cindy Peterson exits the race on the back stretch. We are really going to have an eyeful. That's why Ralph was in a hurry. He was headed to the head of the pack to see how the leaders fare on these pit stops.
Well, he went down to wait at the far end of pit road for Mike Eddy, and that's where Eddie's heading right now. Ralph had run all the way down there, and we expect that the next report we'll get from Ralph Shaheen will be relevant to the leader of this race, the number 88. Meanwhile, several stalls behind is Bob Seneker, but first let's go to Ralph on Mike Eddy.
Getty pit at the other end of pit lane, would you? Boy, that was a long run. He's in, takes on two right side tires, gasses it up from Howard Thomas. He does beat Bob Seneker and Tony Raines out of the pit. They exit that way. Glenn Allen Jr. will be in the next one out, as is Dave Sexton and Brad Loney. Everybody doing just what we expected. Two right side tire and a fuel load. They should be set from here.
Sensiba would have picked up a spot. He actually had a quicker pit stop than Glenn Allen Jr., who's pitted at the turn 4 end of pit road, but he did kill the engine on the restart, so he would have picked up a spot. He'll end up right behind Glenn Allen.
Well, the leaders have all gone in and have come back out much the same as they were. Mike Eddy leads. Bob Seneker is second. Tony Raines is third. The scorers are doing their job. Tune into Prime next Saturday, June 10th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. 1 week from now, 8 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, when the AC-Delco Challenge Series presents the Missouri 300. From I-70 Speedway in Odessa, Missouri, we will bring you live coverage of this exciting ASA race. That's June 10th, 9 p.m., the Missouri 300 on Prime.
As we're half a lap from going back to green, we misled you as we went to break. Mike Eddy is not the leader. Brian Refner, who had pitted earlier, is now appropriating the lead. There he goes, just out of frame in the black and yellow car number 5. There went Mike Eddy and Bob Seneker. They're actually running in 4th and 5th positions, as Todd Forbes and Rick Miller also stayed on the racetrack. They're 2nd and 3rd.
Here we go on the restart. J.D. Summer in the number 22 car, the first car on the racetrack. Quickly down to the inside goes Mike Eddy, but Brian Refner in the black number 5, technically the leader, and since he had already pitted, that sets up a pretty interesting situation now, because he won't have to go in.
And the leaders have to be, the early race leaders have to be very careful as they work their way through some lap traffic. We saw Mike Eddy very wisely getting out of the throttle going down the backstretch. For a moment it looked like he wanted to make it 3 wide. He said, no, I'll save it for a little later. Now he goes to the low side of Rick Miller, and that is in fact a battle for 2nd position.
Brian Refner a couple of spots ahead of them, and J.D. Summer in the 6th car of Rick Beebe trying to stay out in front of the leader and perhaps get a lap back if another caution comes out. So the pit stop strategy has made for an interesting situation right now, and a new leader for the first time in this Jennerstown 250. Brian Refner, Rookie of the Year contender 1 year ago in the 1994 season. There he is in the number 5 machine, the structural transport Ford Thunderbird.
Earned the pole here for the fall race. race at Jennerstown, led a number of laps before fading late in the going. A good battle for second position as Mike Eddy goes to the low side of Todd Forbes.
And gets that position away. Forbes on the outside in the 07 started 21st in the race. And there's Bob Seneker dropped in behind Mike Eddy again. So things between those two have not changed. However, they're racing for second instead of for the lead. But they moved right up behind Brian Refner now, who's dealing with Rick Beebe and J.D. Summer. There is second and third place now, Mike Eddy and Bob Seneker. And another caution flag coming out. So, and there is the reason why, as we see a trio of cars facing every which way. Cindy Peterson, the number 36 car, gets moving and almost gets backed into there by the 27 of Ray Skillman. So these guys are all going to get moving again, and we'll sort it out for you in a moment as the leaders just came by.
The third car is Jim Seeger's car number 25 as he's faced the wrong way headed into traffic, and that ETR E&L Brokerage car number 25.
So it looks as though the Rick Beebe, J.D. Summer situation has played itself out well. Those two should be able to go around to the tail end of the field, and while they were in danger of being lapped, now in fact they're just going to be at the back of the bunch. Here's another look at what happened and how it's set up for the 25, the 27, and the 36 cars.
To see the aftermath, the Seeger's machine actually backs in, tail to tail with Ray Skillman's car number 27. Didn't see what triggered it.
And Cindy Peterson there apparently avoiding both of them. No major damage to her car. She's several laps down at the moment. Here's the 25 car moving once again, so we expect things to get back in action shortly. There is Roger Slack, the young flagman for the American Speed Association, who even at his tender age is very much in control of things here at Jennerstown. So while he maintains control and things will go back to green, we expect when you come back. Join us. Welcome back, everybody. We managed to talk Roger Slack into holding on to the green flag for just a quick minute. No, that's not really true, but let's go real quick down to Ralph Shaheen. He's got a report.
A broken motor has ended the night of Joey Knott. We saw Scott Hansen pit real quick as the green flag comes back out. He took left side tires, and J.D. Summers gave up the lead position to come in and change 2 rear tires, which is not unusual in ASA racing.
May have been the lead position. Actually, J.D. had gone a lap down in our last lengthy green flag stretch. Brian Refner now has got a mirror full of black car number 88 as Mike Eddy is right there to challenge in second position. Now is about the time that if Bob Seneker has something that he's been hiding, he's been holding that hand and not tipping it, not letting anybody know what a good poker player he is. We're going to see it here shortly.
A pair of black cars in tandem out front right now as Mike Eddy works the number 5 car for the lead. Brian Refner trying to hold on the outside as Mike Eddy works it down low. These two going door handle to door handle. Bob Seneker hoping to inherit some good fortune perhaps if those two get tangled up. He's trying to stay real close. But Mike Eddy, who had led the first 100 and some laps of this race, gave up the lead to Brian Refner on pit stops, and Refner is not willing to relinquish it as easily as a sophomore driver might be.
Can I ask you a question? If they're door handle to door handle, why do they climb into these cars without opening the doors?
I knew you were going to ask that. Mike Eddy takes the lead away from Brian Refner now. At least it appears that way, although we have seen that low line kind of not work. The outside line get a little better drive off the turns, but not this time. And even Bob Seneker looks like he's going to follow through there. Never mind the door handles. Bob Seneker probably just scrub one off if he got that close.
It's a flat racetrack, so the car wants to roll up the track. That's why, see, Bob Seneker is not able to come off the corner and let it roll free up to the outside wall. That's why he's having a difficult time making the pass of Refner. Now it looks like he finally may have a slight advantage. Refner again pulls ahead just by a bumper as they head into turn number 3. And again, Seneker dives back to the low side of the racetrack. He's got to hustle or Eddie will get away. And now he finally has cleared Brian Refner, I think.
Almost. Maybe. In any case, Bob Seneker taking that low line. It's certainly the shorter way around the racetrack, and as long as you can get it to hook up and hold on, it's the best way around the racetrack. But that get it to hook up and hold on part is why these crews scratch their heads every time they come to a track like this.
Todd Forbes Uniforms is managing to hold on to 4th position in car number 07, right behind Repner. Then it's Tony Raines, and then Glenn Allen is getting some real heat by car number 4, Dave Sensiva. It's a couple of guys that worked out of the same shops last year in Sensiva's rookie season, campaigning out of the Troop Motorsports shops in Coopersville, Michigan, now doing things on his own, and he's giving Glenn Allen fits. And they ran 1st and 2nd here in October.
Dave Sensiva, of course, in one of 5 of the new Monte Carlo bodies here. We had spoken briefly about drivers who were using the new Chevrolet body there. Dave Sensiva, one of the first to do so, along with Rick Beebe, and now they've been joined by Scott Hansen and several others. There are a total of 5 of the new Chevrolet Monte Carlos in the race. And Glenn Allen Jr., of course, driving the number 15 Pontiac.
6th and 7th positions. Right behind Glenn Allen is the smoking car number 10 of Tony Roper, who's had a flawless evening in 8th position, but starting to show the telltale signs of a little bit of smoke. We'll keep an eye on that Black Child's Tire car number 10.
Brad Loney just in front of the number 10 car there. Or I'm sorry, that's Glenn Allen there and Tony Roper in the number 10.
You know, you mentioned Loney. Actually, he's 2 spots back of this battle, and he's having a good run from deep in the pack after a couple of early race pit stops and a slight encounter with the wall in turn 3 early.
There's the leader. There are the leaders once again. Mike Eddy and Bob Seneker have gone back to the front of things here after the pit stop, a little bit of pit stop shuffling. Now let's go quickly once again to Ralph Shaheen with an update on Mike Eddy.
The key to Mike Eddy in 1995 are new brakes, gentlemen. I asked him what is making the difference. He said he has new brakes on the car. He said the big difference between the brakes he ran last year and this year is about $200. And then he said what they do is they give him a lot more confidence. He can run deeper into the corners, and he can get the car to stop when he wants to. The best person to sum up what Mike Eddy is like in 1995 was Tony Raines. He said he's an animal with a helmet.
Well, he needs to show every bit of that animal right now, because Bob Seneker is all over the back end of the GM Goodwrench Pontiac. And as I suspected, Seneker is now beginning to show the strength that we thought was there from the very outset of this race.
Well, the $200 expense and difference in expense for those brakes will pale pretty seriously if Mike Eddy can pull off a championship, because we suspect that the difference between 1st and 2nd in the championship amounts to a whole lot more than $200. And Seneker challenging for the lead, as you said, has now gone by. Made it look awful easy. Rob Albright. Bob's your dad. Got a little excited there for a second.
You did. You're excused. Bob Seneker has not won since, I think it was September of 1994 on the High Bank 2 miles at Michigan International Speedway. There are those that might have questioned the competitive fire that still lurked in the loins of Bob Seneker. Question it no more, as he's taken away, I think, for the first time in 1995, the lead from Mike Eddy on the racetrack.
Bob Seneker trying to pull away now. Not only did he pass, but he's actually opening up some pretty serious real estate on that black 88 car. And the brakes seem to be what Mike Eddy is on right now, as Bob Seneker has gone to the front and is stretching out his lead. Well, things change, and they change fast. We'll be right back. Bit cool here at Jennerstown. That's why you see the long sleeves, the jackets, and even the sleeves pulled up over their hands of some of the fans here in the grandstand at Jennerstown Speedway. Bob Seneker in the number 84 shot out to the lead there. Just made it look so easy, Rob.
And he's got a big lead now over the 2nd place battle. And there's the war for 8th position between Rick Miller, the local favorite, and every time he gets alongside Glenn Allen, the crowd goes crazy. Again, they're on their feet here in the main grandstand. Glenn Allen is slipping backward in that Eaglewood Construction car number 15, and Rick Miller gets a bit out of shape and bumps Glenn, spins him over in turn number 2. Let's see if Allen is able to get going again before the leader Bob Seneker gets to his position in turn number 2.
And while we were watching the misfortune there of Glenn Allen Jr., Brian Refner took 2nd place away from Mike Eddy and made that look equally easy, although they're kind of dicing along on the backstretch right now as the yellow flag came out. We're just going to have to see how this all shakes out, but Refner had clearly gotten around Mike Eddy when the flag came out.
And Mike clearly had a problem. As a result, look at him. He's down at the bottom of the racetrack, and he will be coming on pit road.
Let's take a look at what happened there between Rick Miller and Glenn Allen Jr. There's Rick Miller in the 31 car coming down on the inside. They are side by side, and if they had door handles, they'd be locked together. Glenn Allen giving a little bump there. That set up what happened next.
Now you can watch Rick Miller below the yellow line. Now the rear end of the car gets just a little out of shape. He corrects, and it's the right front corner then that taps the left rear of Glenn Allen and sends car number 15 spinning. As racers say, it's just one of them deals.
One of them deals. And Scott Hansen narrowly avoiding another one of them deals, and he's still out there on the racetrack unscathed as well. Net effect is these two pick up a couple of positions, while Glenn Allen Jr. Certainly got the short end of that stick.
And both able to continue. Rick Miller without a spin. Glenn Allen is able to right the car, and I think he probably will bring car number 15 on pit road as a result.
Mike Eddy down in the pits, the right side of the car up, tires coming off that side. Maybe that was the problem. He had gone in and changed right side tires. Maybe they set the stagger a little different. He didn't like what was happening. He fought it for a while. Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen for more. Mike Eddy goes back out on the racetrack. Ralph?
Can't hear anything.
Mike Eddy and Glenn Allen nearly collided exiting pit road. It looked like Eddy got a slight break. Also on pit road during that caution was Brad Loney, and he beat both of these guys off of pit road. So three very fast race cars now will have their work cut out for them with less than 70 laps to go from deep in the pack.
Behind the pace car, of course, the blue number 84 of Bob Seneker is the leader of this race. He took the lead fair and square, and he has held off all the challenges. Well, there haven't even been any challenges. Brian Reffner runs in second spot, and now that Mike Eddy has gone in and back out of the pits, Reffner's situation with Mike Eddy is simplified a great deal, and he runs second.
We talked about the near disaster exiting pit road. I guess our crack camera crew was Johnny on the spot. They got a good peek at it. Here it is. Mike Eddy's crew seemed to have a little difficulty with the right rear. It made him a little bit slow. Watch this. Coming off pit road, there's Glenn Allen. And the pit road itself is quite wide, but the mouth exiting pit road is extremely narrow. And whew, that was close.
Ralph has more on the situation. Ralph?
The thing about Mike Eddy is he only spent 20 laps today in practice out on the racetrack, and all he did was scuff in 3 sets of tires. He wanted to make sure the stagger was exactly identical on all 3 sets of tires. That way, if he had a handling problem, he knew what his baseline was. Mike knew exactly the problem was tires. He came in, took on a new set of right side tires, came back out. His handling problems should go away.
Well, he wasn't the only one having handling problems. So was Glenn Allen. So his caution that he caused may be something that he actually, in fact, needed.
Well, now we'll have to keep a close eye on the number 88 car there of Mike Eddy, because if his handling problems have gone away, that means that he'll be making a move up through the field, and he's got about half the field to move up through to get back into contention for the lead.
We had mentioned that Brad Loney had come on pit road with Glenn Allen and Mike Eddy. He came back in, and now he's deep in the pack in car number 33. Deeper, I should say, because these guys are now just kind of taking a glance at the field, probably in about 15th and 16th spots.
Bob Seneker leads. Brian Reffner in the number 5 car would be second. Todd Forbes in the 07. A great run for that car in the Maisto sponsored machine, the Yoder Body Shop Maisto Ford Thunderbird. Todd Forbes in third place right now. And here we get ready to go green. Bob Seneker getting a run at the flag, followed by Brian Reffner and Todd Forbes.
If you wonder what Maisto is, if you missed our first couple of races, they're die-cast model cars, and I got my Ferrari, and one of these days I'm going to race your, was it Jaguar? And I'm going to blow your doors off.
Oh, you're toast.
We'll race door handle to door handle.
Yeah, well, they have door handles.
Yes, they do.
And here's Bob Seneker, and now Brian Reffner trying to make a move as he did on Mike Eddy down on the low side. Reffner challenging for the lead in the Jennerstown 250, the pole sitter of the championship race 1994, though he slides back into second spot and decides to take another look at the blue 84.
And that's a surprise, because prior to this caution flag, Brian Reffner was falling behind Bob Seneker just slightly and immediately made the challenge on the restart. Now again, Seneker's car seems to work better under long stretches of green. Let's see whether or not, as these next few laps unwind, Reffner's able to keep pace. It is Ford running first, second, third. Then it's the Pontiac of Tony Raines, who's getting some real pressure from the Chevrolet of Dave Sensiba. Now Raines has gotten around Forbes, and now Sensiba works on him as well.
And it looks like Sensiba's going to make a move too in the Chevrolet down on the inside of the 07 of Todd Forbes. Raines made it look easy and just set sail right on around both of them, I believe, and now he's sitting in third spot on the racetrack.
Keeping an eye on Mike Eddy and Glenn Allen Jr. as they race their way through traffic, about in 10th and 11th spots at this point. And finally now Dave Sensiba has a slight advantage over Todd Forbes down the back stretch and into turn number 3.
Well, Forbes still gets that good drive on the outside. Sensible working inside. Again, that has its disadvantages there, but we have seen an inside groove start to develop just a little bit better, and Forbes, in fact, is now settling back and might even lose another spot or 2 to Tony Roper and to Scott Hansen.
Almost 3 wide that time off turn number 2. Roper with a slight advantage, and Scott Hansen is stronger than we've seen him all night long.
Well, we're getting close to the final 50 laps of this Jennerstown 250, so things could get very interesting indeed out there as some of these drivers who have been patient have kind of let things develop. There we got another glimpse of the 18 car Mike Miller. He's been in and out of the pits all night long now after that problem with the panhard bar, but he's trying to soldier on out there.
Boy, this is a great race. And now Mike Eddy getting into the fray in car number 88 as he moves in on the back end of this trio. Almost 4 wide that time off turn 2.
Yeehaw! Talk about a groove and a half. That's developed out into almost 4, as you said here. Mike Eddy didn't waste any time getting back into contention here and doesn't want to waste any more time hanging around behind these guys. Apparently, he is setting his sights on the front runners.
Todd Forbes running a groove almost on another planet as car number 07 appears to be loose. And
look at Mike Eddy.
More spots, and Eddy now moves alongside Scott Hansen.
Man, he just dove down on the inside, and just like that, Mike Eddy has really got something working down low right now.
And this is for 6th position as Eddy has really rocketed through the field since we went back to green.
He had at least 15 or 18 cars in front of him. Of course, a lot of them were lap cars, and you would expect him to be able to move by rather easily. Todd Forbes looks like he's in reverse, and over there on the backstretch, around goes another car, the 81 there of Harold Fair. And man, oh man, Todd Forbes was slowing down. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but the net effect is that Harold Fair is in the wall on the backstretch, and he hit hard.
Good news, we see Harold moving around inside car number 81, and it is heavily, heavily damaged. It just appeared as if Hare did not see how slow Todd Forbes was going as he drilled him as they headed down the back straightaway.
Well, Forbes was slowing very dramatically, and it looked as though he had just taken the car out of gear. And that seems to be what has led to the mishap for Harold Fair. Now, in any case, let's take a cut away from the action. We'll try to sort it all out, sift out the facts from the rumors and speculation, and return in a moment.
Well, a shaken but otherwise unharmed Harold Fair walks disconsolately away from the badly battered Dana Pontiac car number 81, and Ralph is down there to greet him as he climbs over the wall.
I don't know. Who got me on the outside?
It was Forbes. I think he got tired out.
Ralph, you got Harold? Have a conversation with him.
Harold Fair. Harold, how you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm all right. Car's a mess, so.
What happened to you out there?
Somebody caught me on the right rear going back there and sent me up into the wall.
Well, obviously, Harold not happy. We did not see the incident as it unfolded. It's going to take a flatbed to get it off the racetrack. We're just seeing the aftermath here. He's already made his heaviest contact and then back hard again into the wall in turn number 3. So not able to see from that vantage point exactly what transpired leading to Harold Fair's hard, wild ride into the wall. Again, we'll look from another angle, this time a little bit closer. You can see the front end of the car up off the racetrack, and again, very hard contact right in front of the yellow light down in turn number 3, and the yellow had already been on. And Harold's night ends early. He was one of 14 cars still on the lead lap. Well, we'll be back just a minute, and we'll race to the finish. 201 of 250 completed. Can Mike Eddy make his way back to the front? Return, we'll find out.
Welcome back to Jennerstown Speedway, everybody. We're still under caution here, looking at Scott Hansen, who's having a whale of a run here late in the race. The caution brought out by the mishap from Harold Fair, whose car is now going up on the back of the hauling wrecker there. And we are going to take a look at our special feature that we have every week here on the broadcast. Young racers, listen up. It's your time to pay attention.
Hi, I'm Josh Duvall, and this week's question comes from Amy Colburn of St. Louis, Missouri. She wants to know why she's been seeing some Chevrolet drivers change from their old Luminous to the Monte Carlos. So we went to Chevrolet driver Scott Hansen for the reason.
Well, Amy, that's a very good question. 5 Star Fabricating has designed the new Monte Carlo strictly for aerodynamics to help handling of our new race car. What they did is they started with the hood area. They made it a little bit wider to create more downforce on the front end. Then they carried it back along the roof line, and they narrowed that up a little bit. They pulled in what's called the seat post, the seat pillar. They pulled in the quarter panels, which allows the air to go around the back of the car and get to the spoiler. That, in turn, helps the car handle a lot better, gets through the corner a lot better. Thank you for rating.
If you have a question, send it to me at The Young Racers, P.O. Box 26792, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28221.
Our colleague Josh Duvall has is becoming a very popular man. We understand that leaving Charlotte Motor Speedway the other day, where he went with his folks to watch a race, somebody came up to him and asked him for his autograph. So he was recognized.
I don't know why anybody never asks me for my autograph. Oh, kid.
Josh Duvall doing a great job for us in our Young Racers feature. We, of course, really enjoy the input from some of our young fans out there who ask questions that we might tend to overlook otherwise. So we appreciate your input. We'll take another cut away here from the relative lack of action. But rest assured, when we come back, things will be heating up a little bit. Welcome back to Jennerstown Speedway, where some of the Hooters girls are enjoying the run for the Hooters Super Cup. That is the points competition all season long here in the American Speed Association. Well, Todd Forbes, who was having such a great run, is now out of the race, and that means he is a guest on the Ralph Shaheen Show. Ralph?
Well, the Mesa Ford is out of it. You had a problem that put you into Harold Fair. What happened?
Oh, we're having some kind of ignition problem or whatever. The motor would just die on us, and apparently he wasn't quite fastest when the motor come back and turned him into the fence.
This is a problem that this crew has been chasing since Toledo, gentlemen. We also want to report that Tony Roper is out for the night. Motor problems are putting him behind the wall.
Wow, and another disappointing evening for Tony Roper. He got 3/4 of the way into the race in the top 5, right outside the top 5. There is the top 4 currently. It's Bob Seneca, Brian Refner, Tony Raines, and Dave Sensiva, 5th through 8th. It was Roper. It's now Scott Hansen, Mike Eddy 6th, Gary St. Amant 7th. And then it's Glenn Allen 8th. Stauffer now runs in 9th. Rick Beebe 10th. Brad Loney is in 11th position. And also on the lead lap, the 12th and 13th place cars of Ray Skillman and Rick Miller. Jeff Neal 1 lap down.
Well, isn't it interesting that the 2 Rookie of the Year contenders from 1994, Brian Refner and Dave Sensiba, now running both in the top 4 in this race. There's Mike Eddy side by side with Scott Hansen. Sensiba right there alongside Tony Raines. Just ahead of them, it's Brian Refner and the leader, Bob Seneca.
Right behind them, Glenn Allen has passed Gary St. Amant for position. He now closes on Mike Eddy and Scott Hansen as they continue to run in formation into turn number 3.
Well, as poor as it looked for the chances of Glenn Allen Jr. being a challenge to Mike Eddy, they are in fact not very far apart on the racetrack right now, although neither of them is in the lead. Dave Sensiba working that low line, being pushed around a little bit by Mike Eddy, and on the outside another tandem there of Tony Raines and Scott Hansen. With 38 laps remaining in the Jennerstown 250, the best is yet to come.
Sensiba seems to be able to get into the corners extremely well, but he has to back out of the throttle exiting, and it allows Tony Raines to hang on to 3rd position. Meanwhile, Bob Seneca trying to extricate himself from the mess, pulling Brian Refner with him, as they are now about 6 car lengths ahead of Raines and Sensiba.
And further, meanwhile, Mike Eddy just hoping that Dave Sensiba's fortunes bode well for him, because he's kind of trapped down on the inside, and he's hoping that everything kind of moves up the racetrack, because he's proven that he can run down low better than anybody.
And there comes Glenn Allen. He wants to get into the fray. In car number 15, he now works low now to the high side as he'll move underneath, or alongside, I should say, Mike Eddy in car number 88. He hopes.
Well, remember now, this is a race for 3rd place, because maybe 10 car lengths ahead are the 2 leaders. There you get a glimpse of them just disappearing out of view ahead of the 87 car of Tony Raines. So Raines is 3rd, and then 53 Scott Hansen 4th, Sensiba and Eddy, and now Glenn Allen Jr. peeking into the picture. This is a race, quite a race on the track, beginning to develop here, side by side, what we have come to see and get used to here in the American Speed Association.
Mike Eddy made a brilliant move to get to the low side of Dave Sensiba that time, coming off turn number 2, but Sensiba does not want to relinquish the spot as they'll battle into turn number 3. Finally, Sensiba has to give ground, and now he charges back on the outside.
Well, Mike Eddy seems to see a racetrack the way they say Joe Montana sees a football field. He apparently could tell that something was going to go on there, that Dave Sensiba would provide a little bit of an opportunity, and he has gone on by, and Sensiba now gets spun around, loses 3 or 4 spots, and returns to the racetrack, bringing out yet another caution flag. But Mike Eddy just seemed to know what was going to happen in front of him, and he emerges unscathed into, well, I believe, 4th place. Dave Sensiba spins around and loses the spots that he had fought so hard to gain.
I'm sure we're going to get a chance to look at this once again, and it really looked as if Sensiba maybe was unhappy with the fact that he had been passed. Not necessarily with the way that Mike Eddy did it, maybe a little frustration that he had been forced to give up that position. Wanted it back and just tapped the rear end of Mike Eddy's car number 88. Somehow Eddy managed to hang on and Sensiba didn't. And that's what happens to Mike Eddy. Somehow he manages to avoid what could be disaster.
Let's take a look at it here. First in real time, and there's the pass. Dave Sensiba seemed to have settled contentedly enough back behind Mike Eddy, and then he goes back after him and gets into the back end of Eddy's car. Likewise, Glenn Allen Jr. taps into the back of Sensiba, and off they go.
I'm gonna tell you what I think happened. Sensiba gets into him just a little bit. Now watch this. Then they'll separate. This is called brake check. Now watch. Now Mike Eddy taps the brakes again, and Dave Sensiba spins. You want to bet? I think that's what happened.
I've learned not to bet. I've learned not to bet against you, Rob Albright. First of all, you have a lot more experience, and second of all, there seems to be some divine word that comes down to you about what's going on out there.
Well, but I remember that he had said that $200 for extra brakes.
Oh, extra brakes. Maybe he was testing those brakes out. Speaking of brakes, we're going to take another one here. These folks are enjoying their evening that is about to come to a close, but it ain't over yet. Welcome back, everybody. You may not believe it when we tell you, but there was really some pretty good racing going on while we were away there for a moment, but things have settled back to much as they were before we went into break. 27 laps to go. Bob Seneker leads, although Brian Reffner was giving him a lot of looking down underneath on the restart. Then it's Tony Raines in the 87 and Scott Hansen and Mike Eddy going at it side by side once again.
Not that Scott Hansen is necessarily a better talent than Dave Sensiba, but he simply has more experience racing side by side with Mike Eddy. And I think Mike's task of getting around Hansen's going to be a little tougher than it was with Sensiba. And Hansen's not above doing a little brake checking of his own if he needs to.
It looked like Hansen got pretty wide there, and Eddy appeared to get through on the inside, but of course that is because those two lines behave very differently for the race cars. Mike Eddy will look as though he gets inside and alongside, but then on the straightaways, the better drive on the outside line. But Mike Eddy does seem to be making up ever so slightly a little bit of ground every time. He gets a little bit better alongside Scott Hansen and seems to try to be nudging out in front.
Remember, Mike Eddy does have slightly fresher right side tires than the rest of these guys, but that advantage is going away quickly as he's forced to stay on the bottom of the racetrack. Meanwhile, Dave Sensiba is battling Brad Loney for 8th and 9th positions after that spin. Didn't lose too badly on the racetrack.
And just behind these two, of course, we see the nose of Glenn Allen Jr.'s car every now and then, the CarQuest Pontiac. He's trying to wait and see if maybe these two don't take each other out of the race, at which point he could nudge on up there to 4th spot.
Bob Seneker, Brian Reffner, and Tony Raines have to love what's going on behind them, as every lap that ticks off, we're now at lap 229, less chance that Mike Eddy's going to make it 4 consecutive victories to start this season.
Don't count him out, though. The black 88 Goodwrench Pontiac, it ain't over till it's over, as they say, and believe me, the fat lady hasn't even warmed up here yet, even though there are only 20 laps to go.
That time through turn number 4, Scott Hansen actually pulled clear of Mike Eddy. Again, Eddy now works to the low side, has just a fender alongside in turn number 3.
We're going to get a glimpse of the number 27 car as he moves over, though. Very gentlemanly move there by Ray Skillman in the 27 car to allow all the leaders to get by him very nicely.
Skillman had a good run going tonight, too. He had been on the lead lap much of the night. Now the power seems to be going away in that car as he's dropped a lap off the pace. He's very slow through turn number 4.
Well, Mike Eddy just does not seem to have as much for Scott Hansen as he did a while ago, and perhaps we're seeing a little resignation from the driver of the number 88 car. Well, just as we say that, he starts trying it again, trying to work that inside line against Scott Hansen, but Hansen defending extremely well in his new Monte Carlo.
I don't think Mike Eddy really understands the meaning of the word resignation. He never driver gives up.
Well, you called him a lamb earlier, and
that's going to come back. I'm afraid that's going to come back and bite me big time.
I'll tell you what, though. Bob Seneker just turned from a lamb into a lion, just in the blink of an eye, about midway through this race. When you predicted, well, if Bob Seneker's got anything, he better show it now. He certainly did in a big way. Took the lead away from Mike Eddy, and it's been all Bob Seneker now, because he has fought back the challenge of Brian Refner, who's now some 10 car lengths behind, and the best race on the track continues to be that between number 88 Mike Eddy and 53 Scott Hansen.
And Hansen carrying a new logo on the hood of car number 53. You can see the familiar AK, the orange and brown Alan Kowicki signature, and Scott would love to do nothing better than fend off his rival Eddy and hang on to that position. He wanted a victory. He's not going to get that, it doesn't appear. But boy, they're having a ball out there battling for this 4th spot.
He goes so wide coming out of that turn that it looks as though he's just going to leave the racetrack, but he gets the great drive out high like that and stays out in front of Mike Eddy. Mike Eddy's got a little bit of a squeeze play going on now. He's going to have to drop behind to get around the 36 of Cindy Peterson, who goes down another lap. And here we go. He'll nudge back on the inside again.
And they both go to work on Tony Raines in car number 87 as that clean burn AFCO machine now has fallen back into the clutches of this battle. When they run nose to tail, they catch Tony Raines, but when they're side by side, it gives him just a touch of breathing room.
Now, we've seen Mike Eddy make a double pass move work well. When 2 cars get up on the outside like that, he seems to be able to pass 2 easier than he can 1, and that might happen again.
It's still Tony Raines 3rd. Mike Eddy may have a slight edge. No, at the wire, it's Scott Hansen by the slightest of margins as they continue to battle side by side.
And you're absolutely right. Bob Seneker and Brian Refner have to be loving life right now, because the race going on behind them just allows them to concentrate on the task of driving cleanly and smoothly around their own line on the track.
Refner has been a big surprise. He was in earliest of all the leaders, and when the leaders had made their last pit stop, they caught him very quickly, but have not really been able to put him much in arrears, as only Bob Seneker has been able to get around.
And Seneker just keeps extending his lead ever so slightly over Brian Refner. Those two seem to be locked together front to rear, just as Scott Hansen and Mike Eddy seem to be locked together side by side there for a while.
You see Glenn Allen is no longer in the battle at car number 15. He's fallen back, and he's right in front of Gary St. Amant, about to lose 8th position. And look at the advantage that Bob Seneker now has over Brian Refner.
That is the leader, the number 84 of Bob Seneker, the Bluebird. Here he comes, past start finish now, with about 12, 13, 14 car lengths over second place Brian Refner. Refner not able to mount any kind of a challenge for the lead, while Mike Eddy continues to work the low side of Scott Hansen, and Tony Raines has got a mirror full of a black car and a white car.
It looked like Mike Eddy was clearly past Scott Hansen. Then they came upon the lap machine of Ray Skillman, and Hansen wasted no time getting back alongside.
That's what I mentioned before. Mike Eddy has been able to make this double pass move work. While the 2 cars are on the outside dealing with each other on the outside line, Mike Eddy just hangs that inside line and gets by both of them. He's done it again, it looks like.
Not yet, as Tony Raines won't give up easily on the outside in car number 87. Meanwhile, Bob Seneker and Brian Refner have driven away, and the battle will be to 3rd position with 8 laps to go.
And now Mike Eddy moves up behind the 9 car of Dennis Lampman, who moves over and allows them all to go by. Again, courtesy continues to be extended by lap cars here in the Jennerstown 250 as we wind down the final 8 laps of this race now.
Just watched the best racing of the 1995 season, executed flawlessly by 3 of the best drivers in the series. Mike Eddy now has 3rd position to himself, and the battle looms for 4th between Tony Raines up high and Scott Hansen on the bottom.
Both Raines and Hansen have to be shaking their heads going, how does this guy do it? How did he do it to both of us at the same time again? And now Mike Eddy, it just may be the lap counter that runs out on him as he's trying to go after the leaders, but there's a lot of ground to make up to 2nd and to 1st.
Mike Eddy's only prayer would be a late race caution. Remember, in the American Speed Association, the last 5 must be run under green flag conditions. This time by the start-finish line. 5 laps remain for Bob Seneker, a like amount for all the competitors behind him, but should we see caution, the lap count would stop and then resume where we leave off. Seneker now moves in on lapped traffic, and that could be a factor as Refner once again begins to close in car number 5.
Refner in the black 5, Bob Seneker in the blue 84 is the leader, and behind the two of them is Mike Eddy in the black 88 trying to get up there. But again, we're ticking the laps down. It's 4 to go at this point, and that late caution would be indeed a great boon to the effort of Mike Eddy. But right now, everybody with their fingers crossed out there, perhaps if they are not Mike Eddy fans, hoping that the caution flag does not wave.
Mike only 3 car lengths behind Brian Refner as Refner works to the high side of Eddie Sharp's car number 50. But it's Bob Seneker now with the buffer zone, and the next time by he'll see the 2 furled flags from Roger Slack indicating just 2 circuits remaining to his first checkered flag of 1995.
And it doesn't look as though that quarter-second average margin of victory is going to be increased by much here, as these guys are going to go right down to the wire. Barely the tick of a clock will separate them as they cross the line, regardless of who it is that wins. We're getting down to the white flag lap right now with Bob Seneker in the number 84 car. The winningest driver in the history of the American Speed Association. Looks as though he will add to his record if he can hang on for another half-mile lap.
White flag to everyone. Now Bob Seneker heads down the backstretch and into turn number 3. He's going to win this one. The battle may be for second. Mike Eddy has caught Brian Refner off turn number 4. It's going to be Seneker. Refner will hang on to second. Eddy will finish 3rd. Scott Hansen 4th. Tony Raines 5th. In 6th position, it looks like it's going to be Gary St. Amant, followed by Glenn Allen, Dave Sensiva, and Brad Loney.
A very happy crew of the Johnsonville Sausage Lane Automotive number 84 Bob Seneker piloted machine, celebrating a terrific run to the checkered flag by the American Speed Association's winningest driver. There are the checkers waving once and for all, and we will take a break right now. When we come back, of course, we'll have a nice visit with the winner of this race. Here are the top 5 as we saw them going past the finish line at the end of the 250 laps here in the Jennerstown 250. Bob Seneker, what a great run to the checkers, just ahead of Brian Refner. Mike Eddy's bid for second place came up just ever so short, and then Scott Hansen and Tony Raines followed them across the line. We're going to go down to the infield where Ralph Shaheen will preside over a lot of celebration. Ralph?
You know, we were wondering all day today what it was that was going to be able to stop Mike Eddy. The answer, the Bluebird, Bob Seneker. Great job tonight. What made the difference for you today?
Johnsonville Sausage. I ate a bunch of them this morning. No, we were a little bit so-so at the first part of the race. I couldn't run Mike down there, but the crew did a heck of a job when I called for another set of Goodyears. They changed the stagger a little bit, and boy, the car was perfect after that. But boy, I see Mike coming at the end there. He was doing a heck of a job. He's a guy to beat, but we had our stuff together today at the end, and it really worked out well.
You told me earlier today that you guys were pretty much so-so. What was it that made the difference? Well, how did you suddenly go from so-so to so good? Because you were strong all day once we got into qualifying.
Are you talking about just today, or yeah? Well, we worked on the car all this morning, and we kept, you know, tweaking it to get it a little better and a little better. And it was, by qualifying time, it was really good. But the first set of Goodyears, I said, was off a little bit. When we put the right set on, boy, it was perfect.
This racetrack was a little bit slippery earlier on, and you and Mike did a lot of side-by-side racing. I guess that just goes down to the veteran experience of the two of you racing together, that you were able to stay off of each other. Was it pretty smooth?
Yeah, the track's a little slippery, especially after a restart, but we didn't even touch a fender, I don't think. Mike's a good guy to race with. So is Refner and the rest of the boys. It's a good group.
All right, I-70 is up next, which we'll see live here on Prime, and we saw you a year or so ago almost go out of the ballpark there. How do we keep you in the ballpark this year and back in victory lane at I-70?
Well, I got to quit breaking parts over there. That's what happens to us. We're usually fast and consistent, but when you break stuff, you have no control.
The winningest driver on the AC-Delco Challenge Series Tour wins once again, Bob.
I got to say hi to part of my crew. Didn't show up today. They're a little bit late. Dick and Hal. Wish you were here, but this is for you guys.
Plenty of Johnsonville's on the way back home, though. Don't worry about it.
We want to remind you to tune into Prime next Saturday, June 10th. The aforementioned Odessa race will go off at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. in the Central Time Zone. The AC-Delco Challenge Series presents the Pontiac Excitement 300 from I-70 Speedway in Odessa, Missouri. We will bring you live coverage of this exciting ASA race. That's June 10th, 9 p.m. the Missouri 300 on Prime.
Pretty nice payday for Bob Seneker tonight in car number 84 after capturing a track record and earning $1,000 for that. He made an $8,000 bonus.
And another upcoming telecast, the Michigan 200, you saw it there, and you will see it here on Prime. Yes, a nice payday indeed for Bob Seneker. The winningest driver just adds to the legend by picking up the victory here, and he did it from the pole.
And no longer an embarrassment as the manufacturer's point standings, as Pontiac was running roughshod over Ford and Chevrolet with Mike Eddy's dominance this year. But a good performance by a couple of Ford drivers coming home first and second tonight. Bob Seneker last won here at Jennerstown back in 1990.
We also have to give a tip of the hat to Tony Raines for his great run here tonight in the Baker Enterprises Clean Burn Pontiac. A very good run. The fortunes certainly seem to be changing for Tony Raines. But wow, what a difference a week makes for the American Speed Association. Now we have the second winner of the season with 4 races gone. We'll be back, lots more still. Welcome back, everybody, to what some might consider to be a welcome sight in light of the way this race started out, Rob Albright, with Mike Eddy just dominating the early part of the race. We thought it was going to be win number 4.
No,
and another workmanlike job by Mike Eddy, but instead it turned out to be a very exciting race in the closing laps for Bob Seneker, for Brian Reffner, and for Mike Eddy, who ends up on the podium nevertheless.
It was just as I mentioned earlier, vintage Bob Seneker, as he just watched and waited for the opportune moment, and when it came, he took advantage, and he was there. Hey, we'd like to say hi tonight to all of our friends down in Charlotte at the Sandwich Construction Company, and off the back stretch of Jennerstown Speedway, the folks over at the Rock and R that gave us the best hoagie steak sandwich for 3.5 I've ever had in my life. I told them they ought to open up one of these things down in Naples, Florida. They could charge double and still be the cheapest place in town.
Ralph Shaheen was with us, of course, at lunchtime, but now he's, well, still on duty, down in the infield, and a pleasant duty it must be. Ralph?
Brian, tremendous race for you all night tonight. What was it that made the difference for you?
Oh, I don't know. It was the car was good right from the start, you know, and we had a little power steering problem. And come in, the guys got that fixed, you know, and it got us off key. We changed tires, you know, early 70 laps in, and I didn't know if that was the right decision to run the rest of the race that way or not. And we decided to stay out there and hang on, you know. And this structural transport Ford, and we got Ford of Greensboro to sponsor us in this race, and I'm really happy. And hang on second, we give Bob, you know, we made him earn it and held off Mike, and I'm just really happy for the way the day started, and to end in second is really fantastic. I'm proud of this team.
How tough was it for you without the power steering? We know Mike Eddy usually goes without it. Was it a big difference?
With all the caster we got in the front of this car, it was really hard to steer, you know, and we got that yellow right when it started going out, you know, so it was a good break for us, and we got in, got it fixed without getting the lap down, and got right out there, and, you know, and got right in the hunt, so I'm happy.
Then you saw Mike coming at the very last couple of laps. How'd you fend him off?
We ran a long time on them set of tires, you know, almost 200 laps, and I was just hanging on by my skin to the teeth. You know, them tires are really getting wore out, and, you know, we had enough of a jump off that restart to stay ahead, you know, and it was just a matter of time, you know. I'm just glad we had enough time I'm glad the laps ran out that he couldn't catch us, so I'm happy.
Brian finished second in the Pat Shaw Rookie of the Year award last year, but you know, gentlemen, after a good run here tonight, might be on his way to a chase for the championship in '95.
Yeah, he came in ranked 6th in the point standings. I was looking at my records from last year, and as strong as he was, and as many races as he led, and having the pole here in the fall race at Jennerstown, I really didn't realize till I looked back that his career best finish coming in tonight was a 6th. He did that twice last year, early at Berlin and then at Cedar Rapids. So a second place run tonight by Brian Reffner is far and away his career best, and no sophomore slump for this guy.
And as many people as might be disappointed by finishing third, or ecstatic about finishing third even, well, for Mike Eddy, that's just kind of another day at the office. He'll take it, I'm sure, and stay out in front of the points lead right now. We're going to go once again now to Ralph Shaheen, who is with the man of whom we have just spoken. Ralph?
Brian, I'm going to go a little bit out on the limb here, and I have no problem in doing this. I will say right here and right now, there is a Michael Jordan in stock car racing. His name is Mike Eddy. You are absolutely unbelievable. As far back as you were able to run these guys down, but it looked like the tough spot was getting around Hansen. How tough was that?
Well, it was very tough. I mean, I spent 45 laps passing Scott, and I think I passed him 45 times too. But you know, we were racing hard, and I guess he didn't want to give up the spot. But I think if he would have given it up quicker, I could have got us both farther to the front.
Tell me about the brakes. Did they really make the difference tonight? We talked about them earlier in the show.
Yeah, I mean, that's about the only difference I did to this car from last year. Is it's got brakes on it now, and it stops a lot quicker and a lot easier. And makes it get around the corner better.
The other thing we talked about during the show was the tires and how you set your staggers early on, and you had a baseline to go with. You knew right away something was wrong with the car, and you knew right away it was tires?
Yeah, after, you know, the car went really good all day till we pitted, and then it went good for about 3 laps after that, and then it started getting loose. And so I knew that we had to get back in and get them tires off, or we were just going to be a car out there circling.
Can you explain for the folks at home maybe who you know, we have a problem with our suspension, we think it could be a million things, so we take it to the dealer. How does a driver know that it's immediately the tires?
Well, you know, everything was working just perfect all day long, and then when you stop and put on new tires, you should get better. And I got worse, so that told me right there it was the tires.
Hey, you're 9 for 10. You finally lost. Does that mean you got to go back home and work harder?
Well, I'll go home and work harder, you know. You know, I knew it was going to happen sometime because I just know the more you win, the odds get worse every time that you're going to win again. So I knew that, you know, we weren't going to win, but win them all, but we'll keep plugging away, and I guarantee you we'll win some more.
Gentlemen, he is 9 for 10. He has raced in 2 different divisions of stock cars this year, and he has won 99% of these. Now, Mike will get right in the truck. He'll load this car up. He'll drive all the way back to Michigan, and when he gets there tomorrow morning, he'll start working on the car right away.
There's a look at the winner of the race. Bob Seneker having a chat with the Hooters girls. The trophy presentation coming up. We'll be back with a lot more here on Prime. The Jennerstown 250 may be over, but we're not done. Welcome back, everybody. Our fears about the weather have certainly been dispelled. Look at the great shot of Mr. Moon up there over Jennerstown as the Jennerstown 250 has come to a close with Bob Seneker, Brian Reffner, and Mike Eddy all visiting Victory Circle. Scott Hansen and Tony Raines rounding out the top 5. There's Gary St. Amant, Glenn Allen Jr. We saw them going at it for a while. Dave Sensiba, last year's Rookie of the Year, finishing 8th. Brad Loney fighting back from adversity. And Rick Beebe coming from way back.
Great run for Rick Beebe as he transferred in through the last chance race, started back in 26th position tonight. 11th through 15th, Kent Stauffer, another just solid performance from Kent. Rick Miller 12th, another rookie, a great run for Rick Miller. Jeff Neal 13th, the first car 1 lap down. Steve Shive, also a rookie, 14th a lap down. And Kenny Irwin Jr., in just his 2nd ASA start, obviously proving he has the talent and the capability to run in the stock cars. He's made his mark in the open wheel ranks.
Looking at another grouping of 5 here. Ray Skillman, who we saw involved late in the race in an incident. Ted Smokestad involved early. Eddie Sharp just couldn't get things together for himself. Tom Jones driving an unfamiliar car, even though it had the familiar number on it. And Brett Bell in the 56, another victim of mixed fortunes here today, you might say.
Of course, Sharp, Jones, and Bell all involved in that altercation in the last chance race. Cindy Peterson, a good run, 21st. John O'Neill stepping into the car vacated by A.J. Cooper, finishes 22nd. Yale Conley, an eventful evening to come home 23rd. Local driver Jim Seeger. And Pat Bordeaux, who had a great run going. He was in the top 15 on the lead lap until engine problems late in the race.
Now we look at those less fortunate, and of course we're working our way down the list there. Dennis Lampman, misfortune continuing for him. Tony Roper, great run until, well, the switch just turned off, as it did for Todd Forbes. Harold Fair involved in the accident that started with Todd Forbes slowing down. Jay Summers, after qualifying 3rd, running up front, also ended up in not such a good spot. We're going to go once again down to the infield for Ralph Shaheen, who continues to enjoy himself as the festivities wind down. Ralph?
Tony Raines was running in 3rd near the end of this race, and Tony ended up finishing 5th. You were battling with Mike Eddy and Scott Hansen. What happened on those last couple laps?
Well, we'd only pitted once for right sides, and the car needed less bad, and the car was real loose. And I drove my heart out. The last 10 laps between me and Mike and Scott it was some serious race, and enjoyed it. But I wish I'd held on to 3rd. But 5th place is going to be good for us. This Baker team, we kind of got off to a slow start, and then we're heading in the right direction. I think we come back here in the fall, we'll have something for them.
You said to me earlier today that you felt like the team was just on the verge of clicking into a winning mode. Have you done that yet, or are you still missing something?
No, we haven't done it yet, but we're a lot closer. The car worked, it was about 85%. The motor ran great. The crew did a great job. you know, you can't ask for anything better now. You know, we just didn't have a car tonight that was capable of winning a race or running second or third. But we'll get her adjusted. When we come back here in the fall, we'll be in good shape.
Did you feel better tonight about the communication between you and Howie Let Out, your crew chief?
Yeah, we were talking a lot, you know, and really we only made a little bit of change on the first pit stop. We probably should have went just a wee bit more. The car was good for a while, and then it got loose again, and that's what hurt us. We loosened up there at the end. Scott and Mike got us, but they had pitted and put lefts on. But you know, top 5 we'll take it. We're definitely going in the right direction.
If Tony Raines and Howie Let Out can get their communication worked out, gentlemen, this will be a team to contend with before this season is over.
Well, it's certainly good to see Tony Raines' fortunes turn around. We have never questioned his talent, and I guess maybe he has always just questioned the ability to get everything put together, and now he says they're going in the right direction. We'll look for good things from Tony Raines. We have gotten quite used to seeing good things from this man over the years, and Bob Seneker, a very familiar sight, the most familiar sight in Winner's Circle, as his 78th victory came tonight at Jennerstown. We'll take another cutaway here, collect our thoughts just a little bit, and when we come back, we'll share them with you. The 1995 AC-Delco Challenge Series on Prime is brought to you in part by Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it's wins, it works. By your GM Goodwrench service dealer, we want your business. By Goodyear, #1 in racing, #1 in tires. As you can see, quite a crowd has developed in the infield as some are basking in the afterglow and some are questioning just exactly why they might have come here in the first place this weekend. I guess, well, we've seen the rising and falling fortunes of a lot of different drivers there. There are literally dozens of stories out there in the infield right now being shared, I am sure. And we have not yet finished up with our stories. Here is a full schedule of the upcoming telecasts for America's premier short track racing series. I-70 Speedway in Odessa, Missouri, you've heard about that. Berlin Raceway in Grand Rapids, and they don't only race on the short tracks and the bull rings around the country. Brainerd International Speedway, and that is going to be a long road course in Brainerd, Minnesota. Hawkeye Down Speedway in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where we visit a little bit later on in the year.
It's a great crowd in Iowa. Salem Speedway, a lot of Saturday night races coming up. That one is a Saturday night, and then back to the road course, Heartland Park in Topeka, Kansas. The second round at Berlin Raceway in Grand Rapids, and I'm excited about televising those races. You've never seen them. You're going to love it from Berlin.
How about Anderson, quarter-mile track, the smallest one they run on, and perhaps the smallest racetrack you'll see on television. They put a lot of cars on Anderson Speedway, and it makes for some great racing.
Like doing the conga in a telephone booth.
There you have it. The Milwaukee Mile, we stretch them out and give them a whole lot more room than they're used to right after racing on one of the smallest tracks. They go to a pretty big one. The Minnesota State Fair in St. Paul on September 4th. Wisconsin International Raceway's Kaukauna, which we will visit for the first time in a long time, and Toledo Speedway once again for the second visit to that racetrack that has given us some thrills over the years. Somewhere in this gathering is our Ralph Shaheen.
And you had a tough battle with Mike Eddy. Tell me about that.
I'll tell you, that guy just doesn't give up. And, you know, he was over here making some comments to me about, you know, maybe I should have let him go and he'd have brought us to the front. But I've never seen Mike just pull right over and let anybody else go. But, you know, I kept thinking, who in their right mind would race on the outside of him for 25, 30 laps? But, you know, we just had a great race. You know, we need to work on the people from Chevrolet to get us a little horsepower here. And car seems to be working real good. But we're going to go back, change motors, and come back out again. I think we'll get up front once we get our motor program figured out.
How far down on horsepower do you think you are right now to the rest of the teams, and which make does it seem has the most right now?
Well, you know, the Fords are running real good. Mike's Pontiac with the Buick motors are real good. I've got a good Chevrolet motor, I believe, in the trailer. You know, I had a great. All these engine builders are great, but they had to try and rework some of the stuff we had, and it's not their fault. You know, they're working with some other stuff, and you know, these things they're 30, 40 horsepower down from what they're telling me. So you need to get a car working real good, but we'll get it. You know, we just get a motor program worked out here, and the cars are working good. You know, I think we can run up front.
Would it be advantageous to sometimes move over and try to follow another driver to the front? And if so, how do you decide when to do that?
Well, that's what I was telling Mike. You know, yeah, sometimes it is, but I needed that high groove, and I says, you know, if you'd at any point in time come up and force the issue, you know, I'd let you go. But you know, he didn't know if he was clear me at any point in time, so he stayed on the bottom, and as long as he did that, I just stayed running a high groove. And you know, Dave Sensible ran a heck of a race there, Tony Raines, you know, but they didn't have the cars Mike and I did for the groove we ran, and you know, we ended up just we run them bad a little bit, you know, but we had to do that to get through, and I'm sure they'll understand it, and their day will come around the same as ours, you know.
I noticed you have a signal on the front of your car here from Alan Kowicki. Can you tell me about that quickly?
Yeah, that's a fun run walk up there in Milwaukee. That's going to take care of the weekend of June 30th. It's just to raise charities up there for the parks and stuff like that, and just a good cause.
Something to look forward to when the ASA troops roll into Milwaukee.
Ralph Shaheen has visited with just about everybody down there in the infield. There's the 88 car. Mike Eddy, of course, coming up a little short of his 4th consecutive victory this season, finishing nevertheless in victory lane in the 3rd place spot on the podium once again. Every race we have to come up with a winning move. Now this time it was particularly pleasurable because we had a lot of choices, I would have to say, but it came down to this one. Lap 172, 78 laps from the finish, and in the blink of an eye, Bob Seneker went from kind of also ran and a spectator watching Mike Eddy to this move right here.
And we expected it to happen, but I frankly thought it would be on the bottom of the racetrack. That's where Seneker liked to go. Mike Eddy said he had tires that lasted 3 laps and went away. Well, that's exactly when Bob Seneker took advantage and took the lead and took the checkered flag.
He must have known in something that he saw that Mike Eddy's car wasn't as good as it had been, and the winning move goes to Bob Seneker.
Hey, quick rundown on points. Mike Eddy, Gary St. Amant, Glenn Allen Jr., Scott Hansen, and Brian Refner, the top 5.
Two-way communications equipment provided by Racing Electronics, the official communications of the American Speed Association. You've been watching live ASA Racing on the AC-Delco series from the Jennerstown Speedway in Jennerstown, Pennsylvania. This has been a Group 5 sports presentation. For Rob Albright and Ralph Shaheen, I'm Brian Drever. We'll see you again real soon.